The Relativity of Simultaneity Paradox, Time, Trains, and Lightning. Let us begin with a simple request. Before we jump into a paradox so slippery it might just slip through time itself, please subscribe, like, and ring the bell for more philosophical paradoxes, relaxing logic puzzles, and deep thinking disguised as bedtime storytelling. And do me a favor. Let me know in the comments where you are from and what time it is right now. I read every single one. Now picture this. You are lying in bed, the lights are low, and your brain says it is time to sleep. But instead, your brain whispers, if two things happen at the same time, do they happen at the same time for everyone? Welcome to the Relativity of Simultaneity Paradox, brought to you by none other than Albert Einstein. Yes, the same Einstein who gave us EMC2 and made the rest of us feel like we barely passed kindergarten math. This paradox is like a gentle cosmic prank on your sense of time. It is perfect for late-night wonderings, philosophical sleep meditations, or just gently spiraling into overthinking until you give up and make tea at 2 a.m. Here is the paradox, in bedtime terms. You are standing at a train station. A long train is speeding past you at mind-bending velocity. At the exact moment the middle of the train lines up with you, two bolts of lightning strike the front and back of the train. You see both flashes at the same time and you confidently think, both strikes happen simultaneously. Simple, right? Not so fast. Now imagine someone sitting in the middle of that same train, zooming along. That person is moving toward the spot where the front strike happened and away from where the back strike happened. So even though you, the observer on the platform, see both strikes at once, the passenger on the train sees them at different times. Both of you are right. Both of you are wrong. Welcome to the paradox. Einstein used this thought experiment to explain that simultaneity is not absolute. Time itself is not some grandmaster clock ticking away identically for everyone. Instead, it depends on where you are and how fast you are moving. Time is squishy. You might think, okay, but does this affect me? I am not exactly riding a space train at near light speed while two lightning bolts audition for a horror movie. But it does. Global Positioning System, GPS, satellites orbit the Earth at high speeds and different gravitational fields compared to you and me down here, desperately trying to remember where we parked. If the engineers did not account for the relativity of simultaneity and time dilation, your GPS would be off by several miles. Which is funny in theory. Less funny if you are trying to find the nearest pizza place. The relativity of simultaneity is not just a physics trick. It messes with our very sense of reality. Philosophers who get paid to lose sleep over this argue. If two people cannot even agree on the order of events, is there such a thing as objective reality? Is now even real? Some argue yes. Others argue no. The rest just quietly back out of the room before anyone notices them. The debate gets even juicier. Presentism claims only the present exists. Eternalism says past, present, and future all exist at once, like a cosmic DVD you can rewind or fast forward, assuming you find the remote. Then there is the growing block universe theory, which claims the past and present are real, but the future is still forming like an indecisive souffle. Still following? Good. Let me give you a real-life example that sounds like science fiction, but is not. Imagine two twins, Alice and Bob. Alice stays home, binge-watching documentaries about ancient bread making. Bob travels at near light speed to a distant star and back. When Bob returns, he has aged less than Alice. Time itself slowed down for him. This is called the twin paradox, which sounds like a rejected name for a bad superhero duo. The reason? You guessed it, the relativity of simultaneity. But the everyday world gives us versions of this too. Think of relationships. You feel like you have been waiting at a restaurant table for hours. Your friend arrives saying, "I am only 5 minutes late." Both of you experience time, just differently, or take a long-distance video call. There is a weird pause. You talk over each other. Time has lagged. Blame the relativity of simultaneity and your Wi-Fi. The beauty of this paradox is that it invites you to question one of the most taken-for-granted things in the universe: time. The clock ticks, but for whom does it tick, and how fast? The answer is, it depends. So what is the solution? There is none. That is why it is a paradox, not a math problem at the back of a textbook. But it does teach us a cosmic truth. Our view of reality depends entirely on where we stand and how fast we are moving through life. Quite literally. Maybe time is not a rigid metronome, but a flexible rhythm. Maybe we are all dancing to our own cosmic playlist, out of sync but still part of the same song. Some philosophers say we should not even try to define a universal now. They compare it to trying to staple water to a wall. Technically possible, if you like failure. And that is the beauty of it. The paradox reminds us that certainty is overrated. Even time, that relentless forward march, likes to play tricks now and then. So as we leave the train station behind and gently stroll into the next paradox waiting around the corner, I will leave you with one final question. If two people show up late to a meeting, but both claim they arrived exactly on time from their own frame of reference, does anyone get to blame the traffic? The ontological argument paradox. Can you think a being into existence? Let us start somewhere unexpected. Imagine you are walking through a quiet park. The sun filters gently through the trees. You hear the soft chirping of birds, feel the breeze, and then suddenly your brain says, could something exist just because I can imagine it? Welcome to the ontological argument paradox. A philosophical riddle so bold it dares to say, if you can think of the most perfect being, then that being must exist. No, really. Stay with me. This is philosophy at its most audacious and, frankly, most headache-inducing. Long before social media gave everyone an opinion, there was Anselm of Canterbury, a medieval monk with too much time and too many deep thoughts. Around the year 1078, Anselm sat down with his quill and decided to define God through pure thought alone. No miracles, no burning bushes, no thunderbolts, just logic. Anselm's argument goes something like this. Imagine the greatest possible being you can think of. It is all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good, the whole cosmic VIP package. Now, if this being existed only in your imagination, you could always imagine something greater, a being that exists both in your mind and in reality. Therefore, by definition, the greatest possible being must exist in reality, because existing in reality is greater than existing in imagination alone. Checkmate, atheists. Or at least, that was Anselm's hope. At first glance, this feels clever, almost too clever. It is like winning an argument by redefining the dictionary while no one is looking. But it gets weirder. Anselm was not just saying that God probably exists. He was claiming that the very concept of the greatest possible being makes God's existence necessary. It was the philosophical equivalent of pulling a rabbit out of a hat and then explaining that the rabbit had to be there all along. Enter the critics. One of the first was a monk named Garnilo. He politely raised his hand and said, by your logic, I can imagine the perfect island. The most beautiful, tropical, fruit-laden island in existence. Therefore, that perfect island must exist somewhere, right? Anselm responded with something like, nice try, but no. His reply was that islands, unlike God, are contingent things. They depend on material stuff like palm trees and coconuts. God, he argued, is a necessary being. The island is just vacation plans. This debate has raged for centuries. Philosophers lined up on both sides, some nodding wisely, others throwing up their hands and leaving the room to find snacks. Fast forward to modern times, and the ontological argument keeps resurfacing like an unsinkable ship of thought. René Descartes gave it a fresh coat of paint. Gottfried Leibniz fine-tuned it. Even today, it pops up in university lectures like an uninvited guest at a dinner party. So what makes it a paradox? At its core, the ontological argument forces us to question the relationship between thought and reality. Can something truly be argued into existence by reason alone? Or is this just a magnificent word trick dressed up as logic? Imagine you design the perfect chair in your mind, the softest cushions, the perfect back support, a cup holder that does not let your drink sweat onto the wood. You can imagine it in exquisite detail, but thinking about it will not build it in your living room. Does imagining something perfect force it into reality? Probably not. But with God, Anselm insisted the rules change. That is what makes this a paradox. Applying ordinary logic to an extraordinary concept leads to absurd results or unprovable claims. Philosophers call this a modal paradox. The argument relies on the difference between necessary existence and possible existence. Necessary existence means something must exist in all possible worlds. Possible existence just means it could exist, but might not. Anselm claimed God fits the first category. Critics wonder if that is simply sneaking in the answer you want by how you define the question. Think of it like this. If I say, the fastest possible car must exist, otherwise it would not be the fastest. It sounds odd. Speed records are broken all the time, but Anselm argued that perfection, unlike speed, cannot be topped. Let us bring it closer to home. You have probably had a friend describe their perfect pet, the fluffiest, friendliest, most adorable cat or dog imaginable. Then you meet it and discover it is a slightly judgmental house gremlin who knocks over glasses for fun. Reality rarely matches imagination. The ontological argument invites us to believe there is at least one case where it must, that perfection in thought demands perfection in fact. Still, most modern philosophers are not convinced. Some say the ontological argument tries to play a cosmic shell game with words. Others think it teaches us something valuable, even if it does not quite succeed in proving what it claims. It reminds us that definitions matter. The way we frame questions changes the answers we get. In that sense, the paradox becomes a useful tool for exploring how we reason. Some even argue the real takeaway is that humans are irresistibly drawn to the idea of perfection. We imagine perfect justice, perfect love, perfect wisdom, not because we have experienced them, but because we sense they ought to exist somewhere. Whether or not Anselm succeeded, the ontological argument gave philosophy a riddle it still cannot fully solve. That in itself is strangely beautiful. So, as we step quietly away from the medieval study halls of Canterbury and move toward the next mystery waiting for us, let me leave you with one last thought. If imagining the perfect pizza could actually make it appear, would that not solve most of life's problems? The temporal parts, paradox. Are you just a collection of time slices? Sometimes the strangest questions sneak up on you in the most ordinary moments. You glance at an old photo of yourself. The hairstyle is questionable. The fashion choices are unforgivable. You barely recognize that person. Then your brain softly whispers, "Was that really me?" Welcome to the temporal parts paradox, a riddle about identity, time, and whether you are one continuous being or just a chain of connected versions stretched across time like cosmic taffy. Let us begin with a simple picture. Imagine an old-fashioned film reel. The movie looks smooth and continuous when it plays, but if you hold the reel in your hands, it is made of individual frames. Freeze any one frame, and it shows just a single moment. The temporal parts theory suggests that you, me, and everything else in the universe are just like that film. We are not single, whole beings, but instead collections of momentary slices, or time slices. Each of these is called a temporal part. It sounds strange at first. After all, you feel like the same person you were yesterday. But think about it. Are you? You do not have the same thoughts. Your cells have been slowly replaced. Your opinions, preferences, and even your breakfast cereal choices have changed. In the world of temporal parts, every moment of you is its own version, connected but distinct. One moment you are confidently ordering a salad. The next moment you are reaching for fries. Two temporal parts, same person, different decisions. The philosopher David Lewis popularized this idea. According to him, just as objects take up space in the physical world, they also occupy time in a way that slices them into parts. You are a four-dimensional being, stretched across time like a loaf of bread. Each slice is a different you. This might sound fun until you realize what it means. It means the you brushing your teeth this morning is not technically the same as the you listening to this right now. That version of you is in the past and can never return. You are constantly replaced by the next temporal part. It is like living inside a cosmic conveyor belt. The old parts roll away, the new parts arrive, and somehow you believe it is all one continuous ride. Now for the paradox. If you are just a series of temporal parts, what holds you together? What makes you feel like a single entity instead of a collection of disconnected moments? Philosophers argue about this endlessly. Some say it is psychological continuity. You remember yesterday, you anticipate tomorrow, and that web of memories and expectations makes you feel whole. Others say it is nothing more than an illusion. Continuity is a trick your brain plays so you do not have an existential crisis every time you blink. Still others insist that you is simply a convenient label, a useful way to describe a very complex process, the way we say river, even though the water flowing through it is never the same. The temporal parts paradox touches everything. Think of a car. Over time, you replace the tires, the battery, the windshield wipers, even the engine. Is it still the same car, or is it a series of car slices, each different from the last? Or relationships? The person you first met years ago has changed, and so have you. Yet you call it the same friendship. Is it really the same, or is it a series of friend slices that just happen to like the same pizza place? Even laws wrestle with this. Contracts assume you are the same person who signed a paper years ago, even though almost every cell in your body has since regenerated. And let us not forget technology. If you update your phone's software and swap out the battery, is it the same phone? Or is it phone version 8.3 of your phone lineage? The temporal parts paradox also brushes up against physics. In the block universe model of space-time, past, present, and future all exist equally. You are a long worm of time slices slithering through the fabric of the cosmos. Not the most flattering image, but accurate. Some thinkers accept this and say, so what? Continuity is a useful fiction. It works, even if it is not technically true. Others find it deeply unsettling. There are even practical consequences. In ethics, if the you of next year is technically a different person, does current you have any responsibility to exercise, eat vegetables, or save money for that person? It becomes like leaving a mess in a hotel room because future you will have to deal with it. So, is there an answer? No. That is what makes it a paradox. You cannot definitively prove whether you are a unified whole or a constantly shifting collection of parts. But like many paradoxes, it offers a beautiful lesson. Change is constant, yet somehow we hold on to a sense of self. Perhaps the real you is not in any one moment, but in the pattern, the continuity, the story you keep telling about yourself. Imagine a book. Each page is separate, but the pages together make the novel. No single page is the book, yet without any page, the story would be incomplete. The temporal parts paradox reminds us that life is much the same. You are the novel, not the page. So as we close this chapter and prepare to step into the next strange riddle of existence, I will leave you with one final thought. If you are nothing but a long chain of time slices, does that mean you can blame the past you for eating the last cookie? The paradox of reference. What are you really talking about? Sometimes philosophy sneaks into the ordinary. You are staring at your dog, you say, "That is my dog." The dog ignores you completely and walks away. Your brain pauses and wonders. When you say that, what exactly are you pointing to? The fur, the wagging tail, the collection of molecules, the concept of dogness? Welcome to the paradox of reference, where words meet reality and nothing behaves as neatly as it should. We humans love labels. We name everything: stars, rocks, sandwiches, feelings. We even name the Wi-Fi networks we forget the password to. But this obsession with naming raises a tricky question. How do words actually connect to the things they are supposed to represent? The paradox of reference asks, what does a word refer to? How can something as abstract as a sound or a scribble on a page latch onto the concrete world and mean something? Imagine you say, the Eiffel Tower. Instantly, your mind pulls up an image. The iron structure, the graceful curves, tourists waving from the observation deck. But the sounds Eiffel Tower are not the structure itself. The word points to something else. How? Philosophers have been chewing on this problem like a dog with an indestructible rubber bone. The early attempt came from the idea of descriptive reference. This says a word refers to something because of the description it matches. The current president of France refers to whoever holds that office at this moment. Simple, logical, A+ for effort. Except reality, as always, refuses to be simple. Suppose you say, the King of France is bald. Seems reasonable until you remember there is no King of France. What does your sentence refer to? Is it meaningless? Is it false? Did you just accidentally summon an imaginary monarch with a shiny head? This puzzle famously stumped philosophers in the early 20th century. Bertrand Russell, a titan of logic, proposed a theory. He argued that sentences about things that do not exist actually disguise hidden logical structures. You were not talking about a bald king. You were expressing a more complicated logical claim that, when unpacked, reveals the contradiction. It works, sort of. But then another philosopher crashed the party. His name was Saul Kripke, and in the 1970s, he threw out the descriptive model entirely. Kripke proposed the causal theory of reference. According to him, a name refers to an object not because of a description, but because of a historical chain of communication. Someone points and says, "This is Mount Everest." The name sticks. Everyone else who uses the name is connected by a chain back to that original moment of naming. Sounds better? Maybe. Until you realize this creates its own problems. What if two babies are given the same name at birth? Which John Smith does your sentence about John Smith refer to? If someone renames a mountain, is it the same mountain? If aliens discover Earth and name it Blorg, does Earth stop referring to it? The paradox of reference sits quietly at the center of all this confusion and smiles politely. It refuses to be solved. We rely on reference every day. You say, "my car," and people know you do not mean every car in existence. You say, "that chair," and people do not think you are talking about the concept of chairness floating somewhere in a platonic heaven. Yet when pressed, nobody can fully explain how words and reality hold hands so effortlessly. Think of it like this. Words are like labels on jars. The problem is that sometimes the label peels off, the contents change. Or worse, the jar was empty all along. Language works most of the time because context saves us. You say Paris, and people assume you mean the city in France, not Paris, Texas, unless you are wearing cowboy boots. You say Jaguar, and your friend guesses whether you mean the car, the animal, or the overpriced sports team. Even humor plays with this. Puns, wordplay, and double meanings all rely on twisting reference in unexpected ways. Time flies like an arrow. Fruit flies like a banana. Thank you, Groucho Marx. But reference also causes real confusion. Legal documents obsess over precision because vague words can cause lawsuits. Scientists argue over definitions of species, elements, or diseases because even tiny errors in reference can derail years of research. And let us not forget artificial intelligence. If you tell a robot, "fetch the red ball," how does it know which ball is red, or even what ball refers to? Machines are learning language, but the paradox of reference remains their ultimate test. In philosophy, some thinkers shrug and say that reference is a practical success story, not a perfect theory. We may never understand how words link to the world, but we manage to communicate, order coffee, and argue about movies anyway. Others argue that reference is not a fixed connection, but a flexible dance between speaker, listener, and context. It works because we agree, not because the universe insists on it. The paradox of reference teaches us something humbling. Language is both our greatest invention and our most fragile illusion. It allows us to describe galaxies, atoms, love, and Monday mornings, yet it rests on rules nobody fully understands. And that is the beauty of it. The uncertainty makes language endlessly adaptable, endlessly creative, and endlessly fun to mess with. So as we quietly set this paradox aside and move toward the next curious doorway in our journey, I will leave you with one last thought. If someone says, "Tell me the meaning of life," and you reply, 42. Does the number refer to anything at all? The puzzle of modal realism. Do all possible worlds actually exist? There are some questions that only philosophy dares to ask. You burn your toast in the morning and sigh, things could have gone differently. Somewhere in the back of your mind, a little voice whispers, what if they did go differently? Somewhere else. Welcome to the puzzle of modal realism, where we take that innocent what if and crank the dial all the way to maximum weirdness. The idea begins with a simple observation. We talk about possibilities all the time. You could have taken a different route to work. The movie could have ended differently. The cat could have decided not to knock your glass off the table. Philosophers call these possibilities possible worlds. They are not meant to be actual places, just ways of thinking about how reality could have been. For most of history, everyone was comfortable treating them as useful imaginary tools. Then came David Lewis. In the 1970s, Lewis walked into the philosophical party and confidently declared, all possible worlds are real. Every single one. They exist just as concretely as our world does. We just happen to live in this one. The crowd went silent. Someone probably dropped a teacup. Lewis had just introduced the world to modal realism, and with it, one of the most debated paradoxes of modern philosophy. According to modal realism, there is a world where you became a professional yo-yo champion. A world where dinosaurs never went extinct. A world where you remembered to buy milk. An infinite number of worlds covering every possible way things could have turned out. It sounds like science fiction, but Lewis insisted it was cold, hard logic. If we talk about possibilities, and we take them seriously, then we must accept that those possibilities exist in some real way. The paradox arrives instantly. If all possible worlds exist, where are they? Can we visit them? Are they floating in some cosmic storage unit labeled alternate realities? Handle with care. Lewis said, no. These worlds do not interact. They are completely separate, self-contained universes, like books sitting on an endless shelf. We only ever experience our own book, but all the other books are just as real. This idea is both dazzling and deeply unsettling. On the one hand, it solves many problems in logic and metaphysics. It gives philosophers a neat way to talk about counterfactuals. If I had worn my lucky socks, I would not have spilled coffee on my shirt. That version of you with a clean shirt? Lewis says it exists in another world. On the other hand, it forces you to accept the existence of worlds where the strangest things have happened. Worlds where fish invented the internet. Worlds where gravity works sideways. Worlds where your pet hamster is the president. Critics of modal realism have described it as the ultimate case of taking things too far. They argue that just because we can imagine something does not mean it must exist. The idea feels extravagant, like ordering an entire pizza just for the olives. Lewis responded with calm determination. He said that his theory was not about extravagance, but about parsimony of explanation. In other words, having an infinite number of worlds may seem wild, but it actually keeps the rules simple and consistent. It avoids inventing complicated exceptions or special cases for our world. Still, the debate rages on. Some thinkers propose ersatz modal realism, where possible worlds exist as descriptions or abstract concepts, not as actual places. Think of it as the difference between having a recipe versus having the actual cake. Lewis wanted the cake. His critics were content with the recipe. The puzzle of modal realism stretches into science too. In quantum physics, there are interpretations that suggest multiple universes splitting off with every possible outcome. You flip a coin, heads in one universe, tails in another. Some physicists are cautiously intrigued, others back away slowly. In everyday life, we casually flirt with modal realism without realizing it. We say, that could have been me, or in another life I would have been an astronaut. According to Lewis, those are not just figures of speech. Somewhere those lives are happening right now. The puzzle forces you to rethink the very meaning of reality. Is there just this one universe, or is ours just a single thread in an endless cosmic tapestry? There is also the uncomfortable question. If every possibility exists, does that mean there are worlds where the worst imaginable horrors have occurred? Lewis acknowledged this. He said modal realism does not make judgments about which worlds are pleasant or terrible. It simply says that if something is logically possible, somewhere it exists. For many, this is the breaking point. It feels wrong to treat the worst possible worlds as casually real. Yet Lewis held firm. Reality is not obligated to fit our sense of comfort. The puzzle of modal realism, like all good paradoxes, offers no final answer. It leaves you somewhere between awe and confusion, staring into the endless kaleidoscope of possibilities. Perhaps the greatest lesson is humility. We think of our world as the center of everything, yet modal realism suggests we might be just one of an infinite crowd. And that realization leads to a strange sort of comfort too. If there are infinite versions of you out there, then maybe, just maybe, one of them remembered to set the alarm this morning. So as we step away from the dizzying infinity of possible worlds and return to the cozy familiarity of our own, I will leave you with one final thought. If every possible version of you exists somewhere, does that mean there is a universe where you actually understand how taxes work? The paradox of infinite divisibility. Can you ever reach the end of cutting something? Every once in a while, a completely ordinary activity turns into a philosophical crisis. You break a cookie in half. You break the half in half. You break that half in half again. Suddenly your brain interrupts. Wait, can I just keep breaking this forever? Welcome to the paradox of infinite divisibility, where objects become less about things and more about the infinite game of slicing, dicing, and asking why you ever started thinking about this in the first place. Let us start with the basics. The ancient Greeks, always ready to ruin your peaceful snack time with deep thoughts, loved this puzzle. They wondered, is there a smallest possible unit of matter, or can you always divide something again and again without ever reaching a true stopping point? Imagine you have a stick. You cut it in half. You take one half and cut that in half. You repeat the process. Logically, each piece keeps getting smaller and smaller, but never quite reaches zero. There is always something left to cut. This leads to the haunting idea that even the tiniest grain of sand could be divided into an infinite number of smaller and smaller parts. Suddenly, your relaxing walk on the beach feels like walking on an endless, mathematical nightmare. Zeno of Elea, a philosopher from ancient Greece, absolutely loved this kind of headache. He crafted famous paradoxes based on infinite divisibility. His most famous one? Achilles and the tortoise. In it, Achilles races a tortoise. Because Achilles is so fast and the tortoise so slow, the tortoise gets a small head start. But every time Achilles reaches the spot where the tortoise was, the tortoise has moved a little farther ahead. Achilles closes the distance again, but the tortoise has crept forward once more. According to Zeno, Achilles never actually passes the tortoise because there are always infinite points he must reach first. Of course, we know Achilles would eventually overtake the tortoise. Real races happen. Olympic athletes are not losing to turtles. So, what went wrong? The answer leads us straight into the paradox. Zeno was not trying to prove that turtles rule the track. He was highlighting a strange feature of infinity. When you divide a distance into an infinite number of parts, you still cover a finite distance. Modern mathematics explains this using convergent series. The infinite steps Achilles must take get smaller and smaller so rapidly that their total adds up to a finite number. You can think of it as adding fractions. 1/2 plus 1/4 plus 1/8 plus 1/16. It goes on forever, yet the total approaches 1. Achilles wins. The tortoise does not get to keep his gold medal. But the paradox of infinite divisibility is far from solved. Even today, physicists and philosophers debate whether reality is continuous or discrete. If reality is continuous, then space and time can be divided infinitely. Every distance has smaller distances inside it. Every moment can be split into smaller moments. If reality is discrete, then there is a smallest possible unit, the Planck length for space and the Planck time for time. According to some theories of quantum gravity, these are the pixels of the universe. You cannot go smaller. Reality has an unbreakable resolution, like a cosmic video game. Nobody knows for sure. Some argue that infinite divisibility leads to absurd results, like infinite mass or energy densities. Others say the math works fine, so maybe the universe really does go on slicing itself forever. The paradox even sneaks into modern technology. When engineers design circuits, they often deal with quantities that get infinitely close to zero without ever quite getting there. Calculus, the mathematical tool used by scientists and engineers, is built entirely on understanding how to handle infinite divisibility without losing your mind. Philosophers point out that while calculus solves the math, it does not answer the deep metaphysical question: does infinite divisibility exist in the physical world, or only in the world of numbers and ideas? To make this even stranger, think about motion. If you walk across the room, you first have to walk halfway, then halfway of what is left, then halfway of that. In theory, you face an infinite number of halfway points. Why do your legs not collapse in existential despair halfway to the fridge? Because just like Achilles, you pass through each point in less and less time. The total time and distance remain finite. Your midnight snack is safe. The paradox teaches us a valuable lesson about how we think. Our brains are not built to comfortably handle infinity. We like definite answers, tidy packages, and knowing when things are done. Infinity laughs at that and keeps going. Some thinkers even suggest that our inability to grasp infinity fully is a clue about the limits of human understanding. Maybe the universe hides these infinite layers, or maybe it just looks that way because of the way we model it. The paradox of infinite divisibility may never have a final answer. It hovers between mathematics and metaphysics, teasing us with the idea that even the smallest thing might be an endless journey inward. So next time you break a cookie in half, think about this. No matter how small the crumbs get, there is always the idea that you could break them again. And as we gently sweep the crumbs of this paradox off the philosophical table and prepare for the next one, I will leave you with a final thought. If everything can be divided forever, does that mean your last slice of pizza was not really your last slice? The puzzle of immaterial souls. Can something without matter still exist? Some questions wait quietly in the background of everyday life. You drop your phone and worry about the screen. You stub your toe and curse. You get hungry and eat. Everything you deal with seems solid, physical, and unavoidably tied to stuff. But then, late at night, your brain leans in and whispers, "What about your soul?" Welcome to the puzzle of immaterial souls, where the question is not just about what you are, but whether you are something that goes beyond atoms, molecules, and the inconvenient reality of gravity. For most of human history, the soul has been the ultimate invisible VIP pass. Cultures everywhere have described it: the spirit, the essence, the life force, the part of you that does not age even when your back starts making weird cracking sounds. But the problem begins when philosophers start asking hard questions. If your soul has no mass, no shape, and no place, how does it exist? How does something non-physical interact with your very physical body? How can the immaterial push around the material? This is known as the interaction problem, and it has kept many philosophers and theologians awake at night, possibly with a lot of coffee. The most famous early attempt to answer this came from René Descartes. You probably know him from his quote, "I think, therefore I am." Descartes believed every person was made of two distinct substances: the body, physical stuff, and the mind or soul, non-physical stuff. This is called substance dualism. In Descartes' view, your body is like a machine made of flesh, while your soul is the driver at the wheel. It thinks, it feels, it decides. The soul and the body work together to create the full human experience. Sounds elegant, until you realize Descartes never fully explained how the two connect. He proposed that the pineal gland, a tiny structure deep in the brain, might be the seat of the soul, Today we know the pineal gland mostly regulates sleep, not philosophical mysteries. So that theory was quietly sent to the recycling bin of history. The puzzle of immaterial souls gets even more complicated when modern science steps in. We know that thoughts, emotions, and consciousness are linked to brain activity. Damage the brain and memory, personality, and emotions can change. This makes it tempting to conclude that everything about you is just the result of neurons firing. No spooky separate soul required. Yet even the most advanced neuroscience cannot explain one stubborn mystery: consciousness itself. Why does brain activity feel like something? Why does a chemical signal in your head translate into the experience of hearing music, tasting chocolate, or watching a sunset? This is called the hard problem of consciousness, and no one has solved it. The puzzle of immaterial souls hovers right at the center of this debate. If the soul exists, where does it hide? Does it live in the gaps between neurons? Is it floating somewhere outside the body, like an invisible Wi-Fi signal beaming into your brain? Or is it just an ancient metaphor for the complex patterns of a living mind? Philosophers break into teams. The dualists say the soul is real. It is the you that survives beyond the physical body. The materialists argue that there is no soul, only matter, arranged in very complex ways. The panpsychists take the wildcard position and say that consciousness exists everywhere, even in tiny particles. Somewhere an electron might be having a really quiet day. Religious and spiritual traditions mostly side with dualism. They describe the soul as the part of you that lives on after death. Whether it floats to heaven, reincarnates, or merges with the universe depends on the belief system. Science, however, remains cautious. There is no measurable evidence of souls. No detector has ever beeped when a soul entered or exited a body. So the puzzle remains unsolved. The debate even spills into artificial intelligence. If one day we build a machine that acts, thinks, and feels just like a human, does it have a soul? Or is it just very advanced programming? Could we ever know the difference? The puzzle of immaterial souls quietly sits in the background of these questions, smiling its mysterious little smile. The paradox also touches ethics. If a person has a soul, does that make them fundamentally different from other animals or machines? Does having or not having a soul affect what kinds of rights something should have? Again, no clear answers, just more thoughtful scratching of heads. Some thinkers propose a clever workaround. Maybe the soul and the body are not separate things, but two aspects of the same underlying reality. This is called property dualism. Think of it like the two sides of a coin. You cannot separate heads from tails, but you can talk about them as distinct features. Still, the puzzle of immaterial souls remains wide open. We have not measured it, photographed it, or captured it. Yet we speak about the soul as if we intuitively understand it. We say someone has a beautiful soul, or is a lost soul, without needing a lab report to back it up. The puzzle gently reminds us that not everything fits neatly into categories of true or false, proven or disproven. Some ideas live in the twilight space between certainty and mystery. The soul might be the ultimate example of that, and maybe that is part of the appeal. The idea of a soul gives meaning, comfort, and dignity in the face of life's hardest questions. Whether it exists or not, it shapes how we understand love, hope, courage, and even the ordinary joy of laughing with a friend over a bad pun. So as we close this exploration and prepare to walk curiously toward the next paradox waiting to challenge our minds, I will leave you with one last thought. If the soul is immaterial and weighs nothing, does that mean it can skip leg day? The paradox of disbelief, when you cannot even tell who you are. Some paradoxes do not require time travel, parallel universes, or philosophical heavy machinery. Sometimes all it takes is waking up in an unfamiliar hotel room and thinking, "Where am I?" Followed closely by, "Wait, who am I?" Welcome to the paradox of disbelief, the curious case of first-person belief. It is the philosophical equivalent of looking into a mirror and wondering if the reflection knows more than you do. Let us start with what seems simple. Most beliefs are about things or facts. You believe Paris is in France. You believe water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. These beliefs do not care who holds them. But then there are beliefs that only make sense from the inside. Beliefs like, I am hungry, or I am lost, or I left my phone in the car again. These are called de se beliefs, from the Latin meaning of oneself. Here is where the paradox sneaks in. Philosophers realize that de se beliefs cannot be fully captured by ordinary facts. Imagine two people standing in front of a mirror. Both know someone is in the mirror. Both know someone is wearing a red shirt. But only one thinks, that is me. The belief, that is me, is not just about identifying a fact in the world. It is a personal anchor point. It only works from the inside. It refuses to be shared or outsourced. You cannot hire someone else to believe it for you. Now let us crank the weirdness up. Imagine you wake up in a spaceship. There is no memory of who you are. A calm voice tells you, there are two people on this ship. One of them is the commander. One of them is the engineer. You are one of them. You have all the facts about the situation. You know someone is the commander and someone is the engineer, but you still do not know who you are. You are trapped inside the paradox of de se belief. This is exactly the puzzle philosopher John Perry explored. In a famous example, Perry described chasing a trail of sugar spilled through a supermarket. He kept following the mess, only to realize with horror that he was the person spilling the sugar. The facts were all there. Someone was making the mess. The moment of realization came only when Perry formed the de se belief, I am the one doing this. This might sound silly, but the paradox raises huge questions. How does the brain represent first-person knowledge? Can machines or artificial intelligences ever have de se beliefs? If I program a robot to say, I am hot, does it really mean I, myself, this being, am hot? Or is it just parroting words? De se beliefs also create trouble in decision-making. Philosopher David Lewis imagined a person with amnesia. Suppose you know that a dangerous experiment will randomly erase the memory of one of two participants, including the memory of being part of the experiment. After waking up with no memory, you know the experiment happened and someone was chosen. You just do not know if you are the one. You know all the facts, yet you are missing the key piece. Which person are you? This highlights something deeply odd about self-locating beliefs. You can have perfect knowledge of the external world and still lack crucial information about yourself. The paradox of de se belief also plays tricks with time. You can believe I am 25 today, and next year you will believe I am 26. Both are true in their moment, but they cannot be swapped or shared. Your age is a fact only you can believe correctly at any given time. Some philosophers argue this shows that there is a special kind of knowledge that cannot be reduced to ordinary facts. It is called indexical knowledge. Words like I, here, and now only make sense relative to the speaker. They are moving targets. Try it yourself. Say, I am here now. The sentence is true no matter where or when you say it, but it means something completely different each time. Your cat might be impressed by this, but do not expect applause. The paradox of de se belief touches more areas than you might think. In ethics, for example, people often say, if I were in their position, I would. The problem is that you cannot fully step into someone else's first-person view. You cannot transfer their beliefs, memories, or emotions. The paradox reminds us that empathy always has limits. In psychology, identity crises and dissociative disorders show what happens when the sense of I becomes unstable. Patients might know everything about their life, but still say, I do not feel like me. That is de se belief in crisis mode. Even in science fiction, the paradox shows up. Movies love to explore characters who swap bodies or wake up in new forms. The classic question becomes, am I still me if I wake up as someone else? The plot twists are fun, but the philosophical puzzle is real. So is there a solution to the paradox of de se belief? Not really. That is what makes it a paradox. It is a reminder that even the most basic belief, I am me, hides layers of complexity we barely understand. Some thinkers propose that disbelief is a fundamental feature of consciousness. It is not something you learn. It comes bundled with the package of being aware. Others argue it is an illusion created by how brains organize information. No matter which view you prefer, the puzzle remains. You cannot escape your own point of view, and yet you can never fully explain what that point of view feels like to anyone else. The paradox of disbelief invites us to marvel at something so ordinary. We forget how strange it is, the experience of being you. So as we gently close this strange little riddle and prepare to wander into the next philosophical puzzle, I will leave you with one final thought. If you say, "I am confused," and someone replies, "So am I," does that mean at least one of you knows what is going on? The Boostrap Paradox, Ontological Paradox, the mystery of objects without origins. Some paradoxes sneak into your thoughts quietly. Others arrive like a loud knock at the door of reality. The Boostrap Paradox does not knock. It walks in, helps itself to a cup of coffee, and calmly asks, "Where did I come from?" Welcome to the Boostrap Paradox, also known as the Ontological Paradox. It is the brain-bending riddle of objects, information, or even people that exist without any clear origin. Like a book that appears out of nowhere and keeps passing from person to person for all eternity, never having been written in the first place. It begins with a simple idea: time travel. That innocent little concept that has been ruining philosophers, sleep and fueling science fiction stories for over a century. Imagine a scientist builds a time machine. Before using it, she carefully studies a violin built by a mysterious craftsman long ago. The violin is a masterpiece, yet nobody knows who made it. One day, the scientist travels back in time and leaves the violin in the hands of that same mysterious craftsman, who copies it and becomes famous for inventing the design. Generations later, the same violin ends up in the scientist's hands again. Where did the violin originally come from? It was never truly built for the first time. It simply loops through time, passed from hand to hand, free from any beginning. That is the Boostrap Paradox in action. An object, person, or idea loops endlessly through time without ever having a clear point of creation. The name comes from the old phrase, "to pull yourself up by your bootstraps," which describes doing something impossible. You cannot literally lift yourself off the ground by tugging on your own boots. Likewise, something cannot exist without ever being created. Or can it? Science fiction writers absolutely adore this paradox. You will find it in movies, books, and television shows where characters travel back in time and accidentally, or deliberately, create the very thing that sent them back. One of the most famous examples comes from the movie Predestination, 2014. The entire plot revolves around a time traveler whose life forms an endless loop of cause and effect that can never be untangled. If you watch it, prepare to press pause and stare at the wall a few times. Another classic example is the TV series Doctor Who. The Doctor hands a famous scientist a blueprint for a groundbreaking device. The scientist uses it to build the device and eventually gives the blueprint back to the Doctor. The information exists forever, but never had an inventor. So, what makes this a paradox? At its core, the Boostrap Paradox challenges the very foundations of causality. The simple rule that every effect must have a cause. If you break that rule, logic starts to unravel like an old sweater pulled by an enthusiastic cat. Normally, A causes B, and B leads to C. Simple. In the Boostrap Paradox, A causes B, B causes C, and C causes A. You get an endless loop that never begins and never ends. Philosophers call this a causal loop. Everything inside the loop exists only because it already existed. It seems to work, yet it defies common sense. The paradox becomes even weirder when you apply it to people. Imagine a man steps into a time machine and travels back 25 years. There he meets a young woman, they fall in love, and the woman has a baby. That baby grows up to become the same man who later steps into the time machine. Who are the parents? Who started the chain? There is no outside source. The man creates himself, He is his own father. He is his own son. If your head hurts, you are not alone. This version of the paradox is often called the ontological paradox, since ontology is the philosophical study of existence and being. The Boostrap paradox forces us to question whether something can exist without a clear origin. You might be thinking, surely this is just fiction. But the truth is, physics does not completely rule it out. In certain interpretations of Einstein's theory of general relativity, closed time-like curves, CTCs, are theoretically possible. A CTC would allow an object, or even a person, to loop back in time and become part of their own history. No actual evidence for CTCs exists yet, and most scientists think they would be impossible in practice. But mathematically, they fit inside the rules of space-time. It is like the universe left a loophole in the fine print, and the Boostrap paradox slipped through. Some physicists have tried to solve the paradox with the Novikov self-consistency principle. This principle says that if time travel exists, events must arrange themselves in a way that prevents paradoxes. So if you try to go back and change the past, something will always stop you. You can send the violin back in time, but you cannot change history so that the violin never exists. The loop remains perfectly consistent and eternally frustrating. Still, many philosophers remain unsatisfied. They argue that the Boostrap paradox cheats by sneaking something into existence without explanation. It feels too much like magic dressed up as science. Where did the original information or object come from? The loop keeps dodging the question. The paradox also touches on deeper questions about free will and determinism. If you exist inside a causal loop, do you have any real choices? Or are your actions predetermined by the loop itself? The idea that your life could be a script playing over and over without you ever knowing it is both fascinating and deeply unsettling. The Boostrap paradox invites us to rethink our most basic assumptions. We want the universe to have order. We want things to have clear beginnings and logical explanations. The paradox calmly smiles and says, maybe not. So, is there a solution? As with many of the best paradoxes, no definitive answer exists. Some thinkers suggest that bootstrap loops are impossible, while others argue they are unlikely but not forbidden. In the end, the Boostrap paradox stands as a gentle reminder that the universe may be far stranger than we imagine. Time may not be the straight arrow we thought it was. Instead, it might sometimes curl back on itself, like a snake eating its own tail. And if that makes you feel a little dizzy, you are in good company. So as we slowly step out of the time loop and prepare for the next mind-bending puzzle waiting around the corner, I will leave you with one final thought. If you borrow your neighbor's time machine to go back and invent the time machine, do you still have to return it? The Sorites of Personhood. How many changes before you stop being you? Sometimes philosophy hides in plain sight. You get a haircut. You say, I still look like me. You gain a little weight. Still me. You buy a wild new pair of sunglasses. Very much me. But somewhere deep inside, your brain quietly wonders, how much change can I go through before I am not me anymore? Welcome to the Sorites of Personhood, where a simple question turns into an endless riddle. When do the small changes add up to something completely different? The word Sorites comes from the ancient Greek word for heap. The classic version of the Sorites paradox asks, if you have a heap of sand and remove one grain, it is still a heap. Take away another grain, still a heap. But keep removing grains and at some point you have a sad, lonely grain sitting by itself. When exactly did the heap stop being a heap? The Paradox of Personhood takes this same logic and applies it to you. Every day you change. Your skin cells are replaced. Your memories shift. Your thoughts evolve. You learn new things and forget old ones. You age. You adapt. So the question becomes, at what point does the collection of changes stop being you? Is the you of today the same person as the you of 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or even yesterday? This puzzle has been poking at philosophers, scientists, and anyone who has stared too long into a mirror for thousands of years. In ancient times, the debate began with objects. Imagine a wooden ship. Replace a single plank, still the same ship. Replace another, still the same. Keep going until every single plank has been replaced. Is it still the same ship? You may recognize this as the ship of Theseus, the paradox we explored earlier. The Sorites of Personhood simply moves the idea from ships to people. Think of your body. By some estimates, 98% of the atoms in your body are replaced every year. Your entire skeleton regenerates about once a decade. Your hair, skin, and nails are constantly cycling. You are like a living, breathing, walking ship of Theseus. So what keeps you, you? Is it your DNA? That remains fairly constant, but even DNA can mutate over time. Is it your memories? Those are famously unreliable. Neuroscience shows that every time you recall a memory, you change it slightly. Your brain is less a vault and more a creative storyteller that rewrites the script with every performance. Some philosophers argue that psychological continuity is the key. As long as you remember being you yesterday, and you anticipate being you tomorrow, you remain you today. Others are not so sure. They point out that people can lose large portions of memory due to illness or injury, and still be considered the same person legally, socially, and emotionally. A person with amnesia does not stop being themselves. This leads us to the fuzzy, uncomfortable truth behind the Sorites paradox. Identity might not be a sharp-edged fact. It may be a spectrum, a gradual, continuous process rather than a fixed point. Imagine a color gradient that slowly changes from red to orange. You cannot say exactly when it stops being red and becomes orange. Personhood may be just as slippery. The Sorites of Personhood shows up everywhere once you start looking. Think of aging. Is a newborn the same person as the elderly version of themselves? They share a body and a life story, yet they have almost nothing else in common. Not appearance, not thoughts, not even reflexes. Think of personal growth. You may have gone through huge life changes, new careers, new relationships, new beliefs. The teenager who dreamed of becoming an astronaut may now be a content office worker who gets excited about spreadsheets. Same person, or a series of overlapping versions. The legal system wrestles with this too. Laws assume you are the same person over time for things like contracts, taxes, or criminal responsibility. But what about someone who commits a crime, serves time, and claims to have completely reformed? Is the new self still bound by the actions of the old self? Ethicists argue over this. Some say you are always responsible for what past you did. Others suggest there is a moral breakpoint where the new person deserves a clean slate. The Sorites of Personhood also touches technology. Imagine in the future, scientists create a perfect clone of you. Every atom, every memory, every personality trait copied exactly. Is the clone you? If not, what is missing? If so, could both of you claim to be the same person? Or think about uploading your mind into a computer. If your consciousness is transferred to a digital format, is the resulting program still you? These ideas, once pure science fiction, are now serious topics of debate in philosophy and computer science. So is there a solution to the Sorites of Personhood? As usual with paradoxes, no definitive answer exists. The puzzle remains not because we cannot solve it, but because it exposes the limits of our thinking. Some thinkers propose we abandon the idea of fixed identity altogether. They argue that you is not a solid object, but a process. You are a constantly changing flow of experiences, choices, relationships, and memories. There is no single you. There is only the ongoing story you tell yourself. Others suggest we embrace the practical view. The same way we call a pile of sand a heap even though the edges are blurry, we call a changing human being a person because it works in everyday life. The concept of personhood exists because it helps us function socially and emotionally. The Sorites of Personhood is the perfect paradox for our modern world. It reminds us that identity is complex, layered, and always shifting. It encourages humility. We are never finished products. We are always becoming. Perhaps that is what makes life interesting. The fact that you are not quite the same person you were yesterday, and you will not be exactly the same tomorrow. So as we step gently away from this quietly mind-bending puzzle and prepare to dive into the next philosophical oddity, I will leave you with one final thought. If you change your hairstyle, your clothes, your job, your hobbies, and your opinions, yet still insist you have not changed at all, are you fooling the world? Or just yourself? The paradox of moral luck. Are you responsible for what you cannot control? Life has a funny way of messing with your plans. You study hard but miss the job offer by a day. You drive carefully, yet hit a pothole and pop a tire. You make a decision with the best intentions, and somehow everything still goes wrong. It is in those moments that your brain leans in and whispers, "How much of this was really up to me?" Welcome to the Paradox of Moral Luck, where philosophy meets the unpredictable chaos of real life and politely asks, can people truly be held responsible for things they cannot control? Let us start with what seems obvious. We like to believe that morality is fair. If you make good choices, you are a good person. If you make bad choices, you face the consequences. Simple, neat, satisfying. But reality, as usual, does not cooperate. The term moral luck was popularized by philosopher Thomas Nagel in the 1970s. It describes a situation where the morality of your actions depends on factors that are beyond your control. In other words, luck sneaks in through the back door and messes up your moral report card. Consider this famous thought experiment. Two drivers are heading home late at night. Both are slightly over the speed limit. Both are equally distracted. One driver arrives home safely. The other accidentally hits a pedestrian who steps into the road unexpectedly. Legally, morally, and socially, the two drivers will be judged very differently. Yet their behavior was nearly identical. The only difference? Luck. The driver who caused no harm will probably go to bed thinking, "I should be more careful." The other driver may face guilt, punishment, and a lifetime of regret. The outcome, not the intention, defines how we judge them. That is the essence of the paradox. We know that people should be judged for what they control, their choices, their intentions. Yet in practice, we often judge them for what they cannot control, the random consequences of those choices. Philosophers have identified several types of moral luck. The first is resultant luck, like the example of the two drivers. The outcome determines the judgment. The second is circumstantial luck. Imagine two people with identical personalities and values. One grows up in peaceful times and lives an ordinary life. The other finds herself in the middle of a revolution and must make morally impossible decisions under extreme pressure. One becomes a hero or a villain, not by choice, but by historical accident. The third type is constitutive luck. This is about who you are at the core. Your temperament, your talents, your upbringing, even your genetic lottery. You did not choose to be patient or impulsive, kind or short-tempered. Yet we often praise or blame people for these traits. Finally, there is causal luck. The circumstances leading up to a decision are shaped by past events outside your control. If you are tired, hungry, or stressed, your judgment may be impaired. We understand this, yet we rarely adjust our moral expectations accordingly. The paradox of moral luck makes us uncomfortable because it shakes the foundation of moral responsibility. If we cannot fully control our actions or their outcomes, how can we be held accountable? Can anyone ever truly deserve blame or praise? Some philosophers take a hard stance and say we should only judge intentions. If both drivers acted irresponsibly, both should be judged equally, regardless of the outcome. Others argue that consequences matter too much to ignore. Society must consider both action and result. The debate does not stop at thought experiments. It spills over into law, ethics, politics, and even personal relationships. In law, we see it in the distinction between attempted murder and murder. The difference often comes down to luck. If the intended victim survives, the punishment is lighter. If they die, the punishment is far more severe, even if the intention was the same. In sports, athletes are judged by their wins and losses, often ignoring factors like injuries, bad calls, or weather conditions. The champion is praised as morally superior, hard-working, disciplined, deserving. The runner-up, often just as worthy, fades into the background. In everyday life, people who succeed are seen as good, while those who fail are viewed as flawed. Yet success and failure often depend on luck, timing, location, random opportunity, or sheer coincidence. The paradox of moral luck even touches personal relationships. Imagine two friends give you advice. One suggestion works out brilliantly, the other backfires. You may feel gratitude toward one and frustration toward the other, even if both had the same intention to help. The difference lies in luck, not morality. So what can we do with this paradox? Some philosophers suggest we embrace moral humility. Recognize that much of what shapes people's behavior is outside their control. Be slower to judge, be quicker to empathize. Others argue for pragmatic responsibility. Even if luck plays a role, society functions better when people are held accountable for outcomes. The fear of punishment or hope of reward motivates better behavior, even if it feels unfair sometimes. Then there are those who believe moral luck exposes the limits of traditional ethics altogether. They propose new ways of thinking about responsibility that account for randomness, complexity, and uncertainty. No one has solved the paradox, and maybe no one ever will. It lives in the gray space between free will and determinism, between control and chaos. It quietly reminds us that life is messy and that fairness is sometimes an ideal, not a guarantee. Perhaps that is the value of the paradox of moral luck. It teaches compassion. It asks us to imagine ourselves in someone else's shoes and to admit that, under slightly different circumstances, their mistakes could have been ours. It encourages us to look at the world not just with sharp judgment, but with soft understanding. So as we slowly set down this thought-provoking puzzle and prepare to explore the next mystery of the human experience, I will leave you with one final thought. If you trip over your own shoelaces in public and manage to turn it into an impressive dance move, does that count as skill or just really good luck? The observer effect paradox. Does watching something change what you see? Sometimes reality seems to behave perfectly normally until you start paying attention. You glance at a bird and it flies away. You peek into the fridge and suddenly forget what you were looking for. You step on a scale and swear it was lying the day before. In these small moments, your brain raises a quiet question. Does observing something change it? Welcome to the observer effect paradox, where science and philosophy join forces to mess with your confidence in what you know. At first glance, the idea seems odd. How could merely looking at something affect it? But dig a little deeper and the paradox turns out to be far stranger and more unsettling than it sounds. The most famous example of this idea comes from quantum physics, a branch of science that studies the very smallest pieces of the universe, atoms and subatomic particles. In the early 20th century, scientists were trying to understand how particles like electrons behave. They set up an experiment called the double-slit experiment, which has since become the rock star of weird physics. The experiment works like this. Fire a beam of particles, like electrons, at a barrier with two tiny slits. On the other side of the barrier is a screen to capture where the particles land. If no one observes the particles directly, they seem to go through both slits at once, behaving like a wave, and they create a strange pattern of light and dark stripes on the screen called an interference pattern. However, if a detector is placed at the slits to observe which slit each particle goes through, the interference pattern disappears. The particles act like tiny marbles, going through only one slit at a time. The very act of observing seems to collapse the possible outcomes into just one. The particles choose a path when watched, but behave differently when unobserved. The observer effect was born. This strange result has sparked endless debates, books, and even late-night arguments between physics students who really should have gone to bed. What does it mean? Does reality behave differently when nobody is looking? Is the universe playing tricks on us? Some scientists explain the effect by saying that observing a system requires interacting with it in some way. To see a particle, you have to bounce photons off it, which disturbs it. It is not magical, it is just unavoidable interference. But others argue that at the quantum level, the line between observer and observed blurs in unsettling ways. The act of measurement does not just reveal a fact about reality, it creates the fact. This leads to the unsettling question. Does anything truly exist in a defined state until it is observed? The famous physicist Erwin Schrödinger poked fun at this idea with his legendary thought experiment, Schrödinger's cat. Imagine a cat inside a sealed box. Inside the box is a device that may or may not release poison, depending on the random decay of a radioactive atom. According to quantum theory, until you open the box and observe the cat, it exists in a weird superposition of both alive and dead at the same time. The paradox was designed to highlight the absurdity of applying quantum rules to large objects like cats. Yet it shows how the observer effect challenges our basic understanding of what is real. The paradox extends far beyond physics. In psychology, researchers have long known about the Hawthorne effect, named after a study at a factory in the 1920s. Workers were found to be more productive when they knew they were being observed, no matter what changes were made to their working conditions. The lesson: humans, like particles, behave differently when they know they are being watched. The observer effect even sneaks into everyday life. You study harder when the teacher is nearby. You drive more carefully when you spot a police car. You behave differently at a party when you realize someone is filming. The presence of observers changes how people act. Philosophers love this paradox because it challenges the idea of objective observation. Science assumes that reality exists independently of the observer. Yet the observer effect suggests that you can never fully separate yourself from what you are trying to study. Your presence always leaves a fingerprint. It raises unsettling questions. Can we ever know what the world is truly like when we are not there to measure it? Is our knowledge always shaped, even distorted, by our involvement? The paradox even touches questions of ethics and privacy. In a world filled with surveillance cameras, data tracking, and social media, people constantly behave as though they are being observed, whether anyone is actually watching or not. The observer effect has become a way of life. Is there a solution to the paradox? In physics, scientists work hard to design experiments that minimize disturbance. They call it non-invasive measurement, but perfect non-interference is impossible. There is always some trade-off between observing and influencing. In philosophy, some thinkers argue that the observer effect forces us to abandon the idea of pure objectivity. They propose a view called participatory realism, where observers are always part of the reality they are measuring. The observer and the observed form a single system. Others suggest that the paradox teaches us to be humble about what we claim to know. Even when we get close to understanding something, we may still be influencing it in ways we cannot fully detect. The observer effect reminds us that knowledge is not just about standing back and watching. It is about relationship and interaction. We shape the world as we try to understand it. Perhaps that is the deeper beauty of the paradox. Instead of being a flaw, the observer effect becomes a reflection of the fact that we are inescapably part of the universe we study. There is no purely detached perspective. We are players, not spectators. So as we gently close this curtain on yet another strange and thought-provoking puzzle, and prepare to explore the next fascinating corner of reality, I will leave you with one final thought. If simply observing something changes it, does staring at your messy desk long enough mean it will eventually clean itself? The paradox of material constitution. When two things share the same space. Some puzzles wait quietly in plain sight. You walk past a bronze statue in a park. It looks solid, permanent, and reassuringly real. But then your mind nudges you and asks, is this one object or two? You stare, puzzled. It is clearly one statue. Or is it a lump of bronze that just happens to look like a statue? Welcome to the paradox of material constitution, where objects challenge your very idea of what it means to be a thing. Let us start with the basics. Imagine a sculptor takes a block of marble and chisels it into the shape of a majestic lion. Before the sculptor's work, you had a marble block. Afterward, you have a sculpture. The marble did not vanish, it simply changed form. Here is where the paradox begins. Are the statue and the lump of marble the same thing? Or are they two things occupying the same space at the same time? If you think it is one thing, consider this. The statue and the lump seem to have different properties. The statue is a work of art. It has aesthetic value, possibly historical value, and maybe even cultural meaning. The lump of marble by itself has none of these qualities. More importantly, they have different persistence conditions. If you smash the statue into rubble, you have destroyed the statue. It no longer exists. But the marble still exists. It is now just a pile of broken marble pieces. If they were truly the same thing, destroying one would destroy the other. But that is not what happens. This leads to the unsettling conclusion. Two distinct objects seem to occupy the same physical space at the same time. That breaks every instinct you have about how the world works. Philosophers have wrestled with this for centuries. The classic thought experiment is known as the statue and the lump, and some prefer the clay and the statue, or even the coin and the metal. But the core idea remains the same. The paradox of material constitution asks, how can two objects differ without differing in location, mass, or matter? Different theories have emerged to tackle the puzzle. One view, called coincidence theory, simply accepts that two objects can fully coincide yet be distinct. The statue and the lump of marble are two things that just happen to overlap completely. This feels odd, like buying two tickets to the same seat at a concert. Another approach, known as mereological essentialism, argues that objects are defined by their parts. If you change any part, you create a new object. By this logic, the lump existed first, then became a different object, a statue, when carved. Then there is constitution theory, which says the lump of marble constitutes the statue, but they are not identical. It is like saying flour constitutes a cake, but flour and cake are not the same thing. The debate does not stop with statues. The paradox shows up everywhere once you start looking. Think of a dollar bill. It is just paper and ink, yet it also has value as currency. Rip it up, and the paper remains, but the dollar is gone. Consider an old ship that has had every plank replaced over time. Is it still the same ship? You may recognize this as a variation of the ship of Theseus, which you explored earlier. The paradox of material constitution simply adds another twist. The ship and the collection of wooden planks coexist as concepts, even if physically they overlap. Modern science wrestles with this too. In particle physics, particles can occupy nearly the same space and still be treated as distinct under certain conditions. It does not make intuitive sense, yet the math works. In law, the paradox becomes practical. Suppose you loan someone a lump of gold, and they return it in the form of a gold bracelet. Is it the same item? Legally, the answer depends on whether the object was meant to be returned in its original state, or simply by weight and purity. Philosophy students have fun with extreme cases. If a building is demolished and the bricks are used to build a new structure next door, did the building survive in some way? Is the identity of an object tied to its material, its form, or its purpose? The paradox also touches everyday life. When you change your hairstyle, gain or lose weight, or get new clothes, are you still the same person? Most would say yes. But if you think of yourself as an object made of matter, it becomes less clear. This leads to a deeper point about how humans think. We like clear categories: chair, table, statue, lump. But reality does not always cooperate. Nature prefers gradients and overlapping boundaries. The paradox of material constitution quietly laughs at our need for neat definitions. Is there a solution to the paradox? As with many classic philosophical puzzles, no answer satisfies everyone. Some thinkers propose we stop thinking of objects as things and start thinking of them as events or processes. The statue is not a permanent thing. It is a temporary arrangement of marble that exists as a statue only as long as it holds that form. Others accept the weirdness and simply live with it. If two objects want to share the same space, who are we to stop them? Perhaps the most practical response is to treat object identity as a matter of human perspective. We assign labels based on usefulness. We care about statues because of their beauty, not because of what the marble is doing. The paradox of material constitution reminds us that the world is messier than we pretend. It invites us to appreciate the complexity hiding behind everyday things. That bronze statue you walked past earlier, it is a work of art, a historical marker, a tourist attraction, and a metal object, all at once. Which label you choose depends entirely on what you are looking for. So as we step away from this surprisingly tricky puzzle and prepare to explore the next curiosity of existence, I will leave you with one final thought. If you accidentally knock over a statue and tell the judge you only damaged the lump of marble, do you think that will hold up in court? The paradox of predictability. Can you predict something that changes because you predicted it? Life loves surprises. You plan a picnic and it rains. You study all night for an exam and they change the test format. You confidently say, "This will never happen," and then watch it happen almost immediately. In those moments, your brain pauses and whispers, "Was the future changed because I tried to predict it?" Welcome to the paradox of predictability, where foreseeing an outcome may actually prevent it from happening, or worse, cause it to happen in an unexpected way. The idea behind predictability seems simple. If you know all the information about a system, where everything is, how it moves, what forces act on it, you should be able to predict what will happen next. This dream of perfect predictability dates back to Pierre-Simon Laplace, an 18th century French mathematician and physicist. He imagined an all-knowing intellect, later called Laplace's demon, that could calculate the entire future of the universe by knowing the present in infinite detail. According to Laplace, the universe was a grand machine. Every event followed from the previous one. The past, present, and future were all locked into place like the gears of an enormous cosmic clock. But then humans got involved. The paradox of predictability emerges when the observer becomes part of the system being observed. Imagine a scientist who invents a perfect prediction machine. The scientist asks the machine, "What will I have for dinner tonight?" The machine answers, "You will eat pizza." The scientist, annoyed at being so predictable, deliberately chooses sushi instead. The prediction fails, not because the machine lacked information, but because the act of predicting influenced the outcome. This is known as a self-referential paradox. The prediction affects the event it was supposed to describe. You can think of it as trying to write a book titled, "This book will not sell." If it becomes a bestseller, the title becomes false. If no one buys it, the title remains true. Either way, the prediction plays a role in determining the outcome. The paradox shows up in many areas of life. In economics, markets are influenced by predictions. If a financial analyst says a company's stock price will rise, people rush to buy it, causing the price to rise, whether or not the prediction was accurate to begin with. In sports, athletes sometimes defy expectations simply because they were underestimated. A team told it has no chance may rally harder and win. Predicting their loss accidentally motivates their victory. In weather forecasting, people change their behavior based on predictions. A forecast for heavy snow might cause schools to close early and travelers to stay home. The storm still arrives, but its impact is reduced because people reacted to the warning. The paradox of predictability even creeps into everyday decision-making. If someone predicts you will forget an appointment, you may set extra reminders just to prove them wrong. The prediction influenced your behavior and altered the outcome. Philosophers and scientists have long debated whether true predictability is even possible. In classical physics, the world looks deterministic. Objects move in predictable ways according to laws of motion and gravity. But in quantum mechanics, unpredictability is built into the fabric of reality. At the smallest scales, particles behave randomly. You cannot predict exactly where an electron will be. You can only calculate probabilities. This randomness led many physicists to abandon Laplace's dream of a perfectly predictable universe. Even in larger systems, tiny uncertainties grow over time. This is called chaos theory, and it is famously illustrated by the butterfly effect. A butterfly flaps its wings in Brazil, setting off a chain of events that causes a tornado in Texas weeks later. The butterfly does not literally cause the tornado, but small changes in complex systems can lead to wildly different outcomes. The paradox of predictability thrives in this chaos. The more complex the system, the harder it becomes to predict, and the more likely it is that the prediction itself will influence the result. Some thinkers propose that true predictions must be hidden from the system they describe. If no one knows the prediction, no one can change their behavior because of it. But this solution feels unsatisfying. What good is a prediction if you cannot share it? The paradox also touches on free will. If everything were perfectly predictable, does that mean free will is an illusion? If someone could predict your every move, are you really choosing? Some argue that free will and predictability are compatible. They say that choices can still be freely made, even if they are predictable based on prior information. Others say the moment a choice becomes fully predictable, it stops being a true choice. The debate remains unresolved. The paradox of predictability challenges our basic desire for control. We want to know what will happen. We want to plan, prepare, and avoid surprises. Yet predicting the future too well risks changing it in ways we cannot foresee. It is a puzzle that invites both humility and wonder. You cannot fully separate yourself from the world you live in. The moment you observe, measure, or predict, you become part of the system. Your actions ripple outward, sometimes in ways you never intended. Perhaps that is the lesson of the paradox. Certainty is not only elusive, it may be impossible by design. The world is not a machine that runs silently regardless of who is watching. It is a living, shifting dance between what is and what could be, between prediction and action, between cause and effect. So is there a solution? As with many paradoxes, the answer depends on how you define the problem. Some scientists try to design better models that can predict outcomes more accurately. Others accept that perfect prediction will always be out of reach and focus on managing uncertainty instead. In the end, the paradox of predictability reminds us that life is not about knowing exactly what will happen next. It is about adapting, responding, and sometimes laughing when things go sideways. Because let's be honest, if life were fully predictable, it would be very boring. So as we gently close this playful, yet deeply thought-provoking puzzle and prepare for the next curiosity of human thinking, I will leave you with one final thought. If you predict that your day will be completely predictable, and then it turns out full of surprises, does that technically mean you were right all along? The non-identity problem. How can you harm someone by giving them life? Some philosophical puzzles sneak up quietly. Others hit you like an unexpected text from an unknown number. The non-identity problem does both. One moment you are thinking about everyday choices. The next your brain is asking, can you harm someone by causing them to exist? Welcome to the non-identity problem, a paradox that takes the simple idea of helping or harming someone and twists it into a logical pretzel. Let us start with the basics. We often assume that if our actions make someone worse off, we have harmed them. If we make them better off, we have helped them. Easy, right? But what if the very act of making a choice determines whether the person exists at all? Philosopher Derek Parfit introduced this paradox in the 1980s. He asked us to consider cases where decisions affect not which life a person has, but whether they come into existence at all. Imagine a woman decides to have a child now, even though her current living conditions are difficult. The child will have a hard life, but will still consider their life worth living. Alternatively, she could wait a few years until her situation improves and have a different child who would enjoy a better life. Did she harm the first child by choosing to have them under less than ideal conditions? At first, it seems the answer is yes. But then the paradox kicks in. The first child would not have existed at all if she had waited. Without her decision to have the child now, that specific person would never have been born. So how can you say someone has been harmed by being brought into existence if the only alternative was non-existence? The child cannot compare their life to not being born. They either exist or they do not. The non-identity problem raises the unsettling possibility that many choices we make today, which seem to affect future people for better or worse, may not actually harm anyone, because those very choices determine who those future people will be. The paradox shows up in many real-world debates. Consider environmental policy. Suppose a government chooses to pollute the environment, knowing that people in the future will suffer the consequences. Yet the population of that future world will be completely different because of the conditions created by today's choices. The very people who suffer may only exist because of the specific chain of events set in motion by the pollution. Did the government harm them? Or did it merely determine that they, rather than some other possible people, would exist? The same puzzle applies to technological risks, genetic engineering, and public health decisions. Whenever our actions affect who will be born, we face the non-identity problem. Philosophers have proposed different ways to tackle this puzzle. Some argue for person-affecting principles, which say harm or benefit only makes sense if someone is made worse or better off than they would have been otherwise. If the person would not have existed otherwise, there is no harm. Others take a total utilitarian view, which focuses on the overall well-being of all people, regardless of who they are. According to this view, we should aim to maximize the total amount of happiness in the world, even if it means different people come into existence. Still others propose threshold theories, which suggest that as long as a person's life is above a certain level of quality, what Parfit called worth living, they have not been harmed. None of these answers completely solve the paradox. The non-identity problem exposes the limits of our moral intuitions. It forces us to ask, is it better to create a life that will face hardship, or not to create that life at all? Can we owe obligations to people who do not yet exist, and who will only exist if we make choices that seem harmful to them? The puzzle even touches on personal ethics. Imagine you are considering moving to a new city, taking a different job, or choosing a different partner. Any of these decisions could change the entire chain of events that leads to your future children existing or not existing. If you choose path A, you may have a child with certain traits and experiences. If you choose path B, you may have a completely different child. Neither child has the right to complain about your choice, since the alternative for both is never being born. The paradox becomes even more puzzling when applied to large-scale decisions. Climate change, for example, raises difficult questions about responsibility. Our actions today shape what kind of people will exist centuries from now. If our choices lead to people living harder lives in the future, have we harmed them? Or have we simply determined that they, rather than someone else, would exist? Some thinkers suggest we should focus less on harm and more on moral responsibility. Even if future people cannot be harmed in the traditional sense, we still have a duty to create the best possible conditions for whoever comes after us. Others argue for a procreative beneficence principle, which suggests that parents should aim to bring into existence the child who is expected to have the best life, all things considered. The non-identity problem leaves no easy answers. It challenges the idea that morality is always about comparing outcomes for identifiable people. It reminds us that existence itself complicates the math. Perhaps the greatest lesson of the paradox is humility. We cannot control all the ripple effects of our actions. We cannot fully know who will exist in the future or what their lives will be like. We can only act in good faith, guided by compassion and a sense of responsibility for the world we are shaping. Some philosophers embrace the puzzle as a way of thinking about ethics in broader terms. Instead of obsessing over harm and benefit, they encourage us to think about what kind of future we want to create, even if we cannot predict exactly who will live in it. The non-identity problem sits quietly at the intersection of ethics, metaphysics, and common sense, refusing to go away and politely reminding us that even our best intentions can lead to impossibly tangled questions. So, is there a solution? As with many of the great paradoxes, no single answer satisfies everyone. The puzzle remains not because it is unsolvable, but because it highlights the deep complexities of moral reasoning across time and generations. It gently warns us that our actions echo into the future in ways we may never fully understand. So as we step away from this quietly astonishing puzzle and prepare to explore yet another delightful paradox, I will leave you with one final thought. If your parents had chosen a different night to go out for dinner and you had never been born, would you still owe them a thank you card? The brains in a vat paradox. How do you know you are not just a brain in a jar? Sometimes philosophy waits patiently. Other times it barges in and knocks your morning coffee out of your hand. The brains in a vat paradox does the latter. One moment you are enjoying life, the next your brain quietly asks, what if everything you know is an elaborate illusion? Welcome to the brains in a vat paradox, a thought experiment that shakes the very foundation of what you think is real. Imagine this. Somewhere in a dark laboratory, an evil scientist has taken your brain and placed it into a life-sustaining vat of nutrients. The brain is hooked up to a supercomputer that sends electrical signals identical to what your body would normally experience. You see people. You taste pizza. You feel warm sunlight on your skin. You believe you are living your life. But none of it is real. There is no body, no pizza, no sun. There is only a brain floating in a jar, convinced it is living a normal life. The question that haunts philosophers is this: how could you ever tell the difference? The brains in a vat paradox is a modern twist on an ancient puzzle. In the 4th century BC, the Chinese philosopher Zhuangzi asked, "Am I a man dreaming I am a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming I am a man?" The question challenges the line between perception and reality. Centuries later, René Descartes took the idea further. In his famous thought experiment, he wondered if a powerful deceiver might be manipulating his senses, making him believe in a world that did not exist. Descartes reached his famous conclusion: I think, therefore I am. Even if everything else was fake, the very act of doubting proved he must exist as a thinking being. The brains in a vat paradox pushes this even further. You could be thinking, feeling, doubting, and still be nothing more than a brain in a jar being fed false experiences. Science fiction loves this idea. In The Matrix, humans live in a computer-generated simulation while their bodies lie in pods. The movie explores the same terrifying question. If your entire reality were simulated, how would you ever know? The paradox creates what philosophers call skeptical scenarios. Skeptical scenarios suggest that for all we know, our senses could be systematically deceived. There is no easy way to test whether the world we experience corresponds to an external reality. Your brain does not directly see or hear anything. It interprets electrical signals sent from your eyes and ears. In theory, a computer could generate identical signals and fool you completely. So, how do you know you are not a brain in a vat? Some philosophers argue that it does not matter. This view, called internalism, says that knowledge depends only on what is happening inside your mind. If your experiences feel consistent and reliable, you have no reason to doubt them, even if they are fake. Others propose externalism, which claims that knowledge requires a real connection to the external world. If you are a brain in a vat, you have no knowledge at all, just illusions. Still others suggest we focus on pragmatic realism. Even if you cannot prove your reality is real, you have to live as though it is. Paying bills, feeding your pets, and avoiding traffic still matter whether or not you are a floating brain. The brains in a vat paradox challenges our most basic assumptions about knowledge, perception, and existence. It raises deep questions about artificial intelligence. If an advanced computer could create perfectly realistic experiences, would its simulated beings be conscious? Would they have rights? Could we ever distinguish between real minds and artificial ones? The paradox also touches on virtual reality. As VR technology improves, People spend more time in virtual environments that feel increasingly real. The line between simulation and reality becomes fuzzier. Are we moving toward becoming voluntary brains in vats, willingly escaping into worlds that do not exist? The brains in a vat paradox even sneaks into everyday life. When you dream, you fully believe in the dream world. You wake up shocked that none of it happened. How do you know you are not dreaming right now? The paradox reminds us that our senses are not infallible. Optical illusions, hallucinations, and misperceptions happen all the time. If small mistakes occur, how can you trust that the big picture is accurate? Is there a solution? As with many philosophical paradoxes, no final answer satisfies everyone. Some argue that Descartes' "I think, therefore I am" remains valid. Even if you are a brain in a vat, your thoughts exist. You may not know the truth about the external world, but you can be certain that thinking is happening. Others suggest that trying to solve the paradox is pointless. If you are a brain in a vat, you have no way of discovering the truth. The system is designed to fool you. It is an unsolvable mystery by definition. A few thinkers propose that the paradox highlights the importance of coherence. If your experiences fit together consistently over time, that is the best evidence you can have that your reality is stable, even if you can never prove it absolutely. The brains in a vat paradox ultimately teaches a powerful lesson. Certainty is rare. Doubt is part of being conscious. Reality may never fully reveal itself to us, but we navigate it as best we can with the tools we have. It invites us to live with curiosity and wonder. If the world could be an illusion, then every moment, real or not, becomes precious simply because we experience it. Perhaps that is the paradox's greatest gift. It forces us to appreciate the mystery of existence, whether we are flesh and bone or just neurons and wires floating in a cosmic laboratory. So as we set this unsettling puzzle gently aside and prepare to explore yet another riddle of reality, I will leave you with one final thought. If you really are just a brain in a vat, does that mean skipping leg day was the right call after all? The Quantum Zeno Paradox. Can watching something stop it from changing? Sometimes life feels like it speeds by when you look away, yet freezes when you stare. You watch a pot of water and it refuses to boil. You refresh an email inbox every 5 seconds, and nothing arrives. Your brain eventually sighs and whispers, "Am I stopping things just by paying too much attention?" Welcome to the Quantum Zeno Paradox, a strange puzzle that suggests the act of constant observation might prevent change itself. Let us start with the original inspiration. In ancient Greece, philosopher Zeno of Elea came up with puzzles that challenged common sense. One of his classics was the arrow paradox. He argued that if you freeze time and look at an arrow mid-flight, it is motionless in that instant. If time is made up of these still instants, how does motion ever happen? Fast forward 2,000 years to the world of quantum mechanics, and a similar idea re-emerges with an even weirder twist. In the 1970s, physicists discovered that a quantum system, like an unstable particle that normally decays over time, can be frozen if it is observed continuously. This became known as the quantum Zeno effect. The name is a nod to Zeno's paradox, but the effect belongs to the bizarre world of quantum physics, where particles behave in ways that defy classical logic. Here is how it works in simple terms. Imagine a radioactive atom that has a certain probability of decaying over time. Left alone, it will eventually decay. But if you measure the atom over and over again in extremely short intervals, the act of measurement prevents it from changing. The atom is constantly forced to reset to its original state, because every measurement collapses the wave function back to the starting point. The decay never gets a chance to proceed. It is like asking someone, "Are you okay?" every half second, so persistently that they never have time to answer. In theory, perfect observation could stop the process entirely. Time would stand still for that system. This is the heart of the Quantum Zeno Paradox. Watching something can stop it from happening. It is not just science fiction. Experiments have confirmed versions of the quantum Zeno effect in controlled environments, including trapping ions and atoms with lasers. The results fit the predictions of quantum theory. The paradox raises fascinating questions. If observation can freeze a particle's evolution, what does that say about the nature of time and change? Does reality unfold only when no one is watching? The paradox also connects back to the more general observer effect, which you explored earlier. At the quantum level, measurement and observation are not passive. They directly influence the system. It suggests a universe where reality is not fully determined until it interacts with an observer. The quantum Zeno paradox even sneaks into everyday life as a metaphor. You check your phone every 10 seconds, convinced a message is about to arrive. It never does. You stare at bread in the toaster, and it stubbornly refuses to pop up. You watch a clock hand tick by painfully slowly. Of course, in these cases, you are not influencing atoms. You are simply feeling the effects of psychological time dilation. Still, the metaphor feels oddly appropriate. The paradox touches philosophy as well. Some thinkers argue that the quantum Zeno effect challenges the traditional view of time as continuous. It hints at the possibility that reality unfolds in discrete steps, like frames of a movie reel. If reality is built from individual moments, does that mean time itself has a smallest unit, like a tick of cosmic time? Physicists have proposed concepts like the Planck time, the smallest measurable unit of time, beyond which current physics cannot make sense. Others see the paradox as a reminder of the limits of knowledge. It shows that simply trying to measure or know something can change what you are trying to know. It is a gentle warning that observation always comes at a price. The quantum Zeno paradox also invites speculation about consciousness. If observation matters so much at the quantum level, could consciousness itself play a role in shaping reality? Some have suggested wild theories about minds collapsing wave functions, though most scientists remain skeptical. Still, the mystery remains. Does the universe run like a program waiting for someone to press play? Does reality unfold only when there are observers to witness it? The paradox does not answer these questions, but it encourages us to keep asking. So, is there a solution? In the laboratory, scientists understand how the quantum Zeno effect works mathematically. The act of repeated measurement interrupts the normal evolution of a system's state. But at the philosophical level, the paradox remains unsolved. It challenges our understanding of cause and effect, time, change, and observation. It leaves us with a world where reality sometimes behaves more like a hesitant actor on stage, waiting for the audience to settle before continuing. Perhaps that is the most poetic lesson of the paradox. The quantum Zeno paradox reminds us that sometimes staring too hard can freeze the very thing you are hoping to see. Whether it is an unstable atom, a clock, or a toaster, reality occasionally seems to whisper, "Stop watching me. I work better when you are not looking." It teaches patience, it teaches wonder, and it teaches that the line between observer and participant is not as clear as we might like to believe. So, as we gently leave behind this delightfully strange puzzle and prepare for the next curious mystery of existence, I will leave you with one final thought. If staring at a boiling pot keeps it from boiling, does that mean staring at your laundry pile long enough will stop it from growing? The paradox of the stone. Can an all-powerful being create a task it cannot complete? Some philosophical questions feel like puzzles. Others feel like traps. The paradox of the stone is the latter. You sit comfortably, feeling wise, when a voice in your head casually asks, "Can an all-powerful being create a stone so heavy that even it cannot lift it?" You freeze. You stare into space. Your brain quietly whispers, "Oh." Welcome to the paradox of the stone, also known as the Omnipotence paradox, where even infinite power seems to get caught in its own web. Let us start with the heart of the problem. The idea of omnipotence, being all-powerful, is simple in theory. An omnipotent being can do anything. Lift mountains, part seas, create galaxies. No limits. But then the paradox strikes. If an all-powerful being can do anything, it should be able to create a stone so heavy that even it cannot lift it. But if it cannot lift the stone, then it is not all-powerful. If it cannot create the stone, then again, it is not all-powerful. The very concept of absolute power seems to collapse in on itself like a poorly packed suitcase. This puzzle has fascinated philosophers, theologians, and students, desperately trying to impress their professors for centuries. The paradox of the stone forces us to ask, what does all-powerful actually mean? Some argue that omnipotence should be defined as the ability to do anything that is logically possible. In this view, creating a stone too heavy for oneself to lift is like drawing a square circle or making a married bachelor. It is not just difficult, it is meaningless. The task itself is self-contradictory and therefore not something even an all-powerful being could or should be expected to do. This explanation, often called the logical limitation argument, was defended by thinkers like Thomas Aquinas in the 13th century. Aquinas believed that God's omnipotence did not include the ability to perform contradictions, because contradictions are not things at all. They are just gibberish dressed up as requests. Others are not so easily convinced. They point out that defining omnipotence as able to do anything logically possible feels like a convenient escape clause. Is it really omnipotence if it comes with fine print? Then there is the clever counter-argument called relative power theory. It suggests that the paradox only exists if you assume lifting and creating are powers that can be combined in a contradictory way. An omnipotent being's power applies to all real tasks, but nonsense requests like defeat yourself do not count. Imagine asking a master chef to cook a dish so bad that even they cannot eat it. The problem is not the skill of the chef, it is the absurdity of the request. Philosophers have also explored modal logic, which deals with possibility and necessity. Some argue that an all-powerful being could create such a stone, but would never choose to, since that would limit its own power unnecessarily. This leads to yet another twist. Does true power include the freedom to limit oneself? Think of it like this. If an artist paints over a canvas and decides never to repaint it again, has the artist lost skill or simply exercised self-control? The paradox of the stone thrives on this tension. It teaches us that the way we define words shapes the answers we get. What power means, what can means, and even what exist means all become slippery when pushed to their extremes. The paradox also touches on human psychology. We love clear boundaries. We want to label things as possible or impossible. The paradox of the stone cheerfully ignores those boundaries and invites us into the foggy space between concepts. The puzzle even finds echoes in pop culture. Superheroes wrestle with versions of this paradox all the time. Can an invincible hero meet an enemy who can defeat them? Can an unbreakable shield be shattered? Can an unstoppable force meet an immovable object? Comic book writers wisely avoid giving final answers, preferring to keep fans debating forever. The paradox also raises subtle theological questions. Some traditions argue that God's perfection includes consistency, so performing self-contradictory tasks would be beneath the divine nature. Others suggest that absolute power must include even the power to suspend or defy logic itself. Theologians have debated whether omnipotence includes the power to lie, to cease existing, or to change the laws of mathematics. Every answer leads to more questions. Is there a solution? As with many of the great paradoxes, there is no single universally accepted answer. Most modern philosophers lean toward the view that omnipotence does not include doing the logically impossible. The paradox, they argue, reveals the limits of language more than it reveals the limits of power. We use words like can and power, assuming they work the same way in every situation. The paradox of the stone gently reminds us that assumptions can backfire. The deeper lesson may be one of intellectual humility. The universe, and any possible creator of it, may operate according to rules that human minds cannot fully grasp. The paradox does not prove or disprove the existence of omnipotence. It simply shows that our categories and definitions may not be up to the task. Perhaps that is what makes the paradox of the stone so enduring. It lives at the intersection of logic, language, and belief. It teases us with the possibility that some mysteries are designed to remain mysteries. The paradox of the stone invites us to reflect, not to solve. It reminds us that asking impossible questions can be just as valuable as answering practical ones. It encourages us to wonder, to imagine, and to accept that not every puzzle will be neatly resolved. So as we gently set down this heavy but delightful thought experiment and prepare to move on to the next mind-bending curiosity, I will leave you with one final thought. If you try to lift a stone labeled unliftable stone and succeed, do you win the prize or break the rules? The paradox of the eternal now. Is time an endless present moment? Sometimes a philosophical question feels like a soft breeze. Other times it hits you like an alarm clock going off in the middle of a deep sleep. The paradox of the eternal now is the second kind. You glance at a clock and your brain whispers, "Why does it always say now?" You freeze. The hands move, but somehow everything still feels like now. Welcome to the paradox of the eternal now, a curious puzzle that asks whether time truly flows or whether reality is actually frozen in one endless, unchanging present. Let us begin with the experience we all know. You live your life moment by moment. You remember the past, you plan for the future, but you can only ever exist in the present. There is no way to physically visit yesterday or leap ahead to tomorrow. Every second of your life happens in the now. But what exactly is now? Philosophers and physicists have struggled with this question for centuries. One view, known as presentism, argues that only the present moment is real. The past is gone. The future does not exist yet. The world is like a single photograph, sharp and clear only in the instant you experience it. Presentism feels intuitive. You cannot touch the past or see the future. But the paradox begins when you try to define what a present moment actually is. How long is now? A second? A millisecond? A Planck time, the smallest possible unit of time? No matter how much you zoom in, there is always a smaller unit. The present seems to evaporate the moment you try to capture it. This leads to the unsettling thought, maybe the present does not exist at all. Other thinkers take the opposite stance, called eternalism. According to eternalism, all moments in time, past, present, and future, exist simultaneously, like pages of a book. You only experience one page at a time, but the entire book is always there. In this view, the past does not disappear, and the future does not need to arrive. Everything simply is. Time is an illusion created by our limited perspective. The block universe theory, supported by some interpretations of Einstein's theory of relativity, takes this idea further. It suggests that space and time form a single, four-dimensional structure. All events exist forever in the fabric of space-time. You, eating breakfast yesterday, that still exists. You, reading this sentence, that exists too. You, 5 years from now, still worrying about whether you left the stove on, also exists. The paradox of the eternal now arises from this tension between our lived experience of time and the scientific suggestion that time might not flow at all. If all moments exist equally, why do we experience life as a moving present? Why does now feel so special if every moment is equally real? Philosophers call this the problem of temporal experience. It is like watching a movie on a DVD. The whole movie exists on the disc at once, but you can only watch it frame by frame. What gives us the feeling that the movie is playing instead of just sitting there, fully complete? Some suggest that consciousness creates the illusion of flow. Your brain stitches moments together like beads on a string, giving the impression of movement where there may be none. Others argue that time really does flow, and that physics has simply not caught up with how human beings experience it. The paradox gets even stranger when you consider that there may be no objective now at all. Einstein's theory of relativity shows that time is relative. Two people moving at different speeds or living near massive objects like black holes, will experience time differently. There is no universal cosmic clock. What is now for you may not be now for someone halfway across the galaxy. So if now is not universal, does it even exist? The paradox of the eternal now quietly taps on your shoulder and says, maybe not. The puzzle also touches on spiritual and philosophical traditions. Some Eastern philosophies speak of living fully in the present moment as the path to enlightenment. The past is memory, the future is imagination, only now is real. But even then, defining the present moment becomes slippery. How do you live in something that defies measurement and constantly slips through your fingers? The paradox even sneaks into everyday language. You say, I will do it now, but by the time you finish saying it, now has become then. You update a phone app that says, last updated just now, but just now already belongs to the past. The paradox of the eternal now invites us to ask, is time an endless parade of tiny, separate moments, or is it one grand, unbroken whole that we can never fully see? Is there a solution? As with most classic paradoxes, there is no universally agreed upon answer. Presentists argue that only the present exists, and the flow of time is real. Eternalists claim all moments are equally real, and that time is a mental construct. Some propose a middle ground called growing block theory, where the past and present exist, but the future does not. The block of reality grows with every passing moment. Others suggest we abandon trying to define time at all. It may be that time is a category invented by the human brain to make sense of change. The paradox of the eternal now reminds us of the limits of human understanding. We are creatures trapped inside time, trying to study time itself. It is like trying to read a label from inside the jar. Perhaps that is the paradox's most valuable lesson. Whether time flows, stands still, or does not exist at all, the present moment remains the only place where we can live, act, and experience meaning. The paradox encourages us to embrace the mystery, to appreciate the fleeting beauty of now, and to recognize that even questions without answers can enrich our understanding of the world. So as we step gently away from this quietly mind-bending puzzle and prepare to explore the next fascinating paradox, I will leave you with one final thought. If time does not flow, does that mean hitting the snooze button actually counts as time travel? The puzzle of the self. What makes you, you? Some philosophical questions arrive like a soft whisper in the middle of your daily routine. You catch your reflection in a window. You pause, you stare. Then your brain quietly asks, who exactly am I looking at? Welcome to the puzzle of the self, a timeless paradox that gently but persistently demands to know what exactly it means to be you. Let us begin with the obvious. You wake up, stretch, yawn, and say, I am me. It feels natural. You know who you are. You remember your name, your favorite songs, and that embarrassing thing you said 5 years ago that still haunts you at night. But beneath that certainty lies a question that has baffled philosophers, neuroscientists, and just about everyone who has ever stared too long into a mirror. What is the self? Are you your body? That seems reasonable until you realize your body is constantly changing. The cells that make you today are not the same as the ones that made you 10 years ago. Your hair grows, your skin sheds, your bones regenerate. You are basically a walking ship of Theseus, replacing parts while insisting the whole stays the same. Maybe you are your mind. This feels closer. You are your thoughts, your memories, your personality. But even these are not stable. Your opinions shift, your emotions change, your memories are notoriously unreliable. The person you are now might barely recognize the person you were at 15. So what remains constant? Some philosophers argue that the self is an illusion. The Buddhist tradition has long taught the idea of anatta, or no self. According to this view, what you call I is just a temporary collection of experiences and sensations. There is no fixed, permanent core. You are like a flame, constantly flickering and changing, but never holding a single, unchanging shape. Modern neuroscience offers a similar message. Researchers have found no central self-center in the brain. There is no single place where you reside. Instead, the brain acts like a symphony of interacting parts: perception, memory, decision-making, emotion, all working together to create the illusion of a unified self. The philosopher David Hume famously compared the mind to a theater. He wrote that when he looked inward, he found only a series of fleeting perceptions, thoughts, feelings, images. There was no solid self watching the show. The puzzle of the self forces us to ask, if the self is not a thing, what is it? Some propose that the self is a narrative. You are the story you tell about yourself. From childhood onward, you weave memories, relationships, and experiences into a personal biography. The self becomes a character in a never-ending tale that you write and rewrite as life unfolds. This idea has both comfort and risk. On one hand, it explains how you can change dramatically over time, yet still feel like you. The plot evolves, but the book remains yours. On the other hand, it suggests the self might be more fragile than we think. What happens if memory fails or the story falls apart? The paradox becomes even stranger when you consider extreme cases. People with dissociative identity disorder may have multiple distinct personalities, each with its own memories, preferences, and sense of self. Who is the real I? Patients with amnesia may lose decades of memories and feel like strangers to their former selves. Are they still the same person? Philosophers also love to play with thought experiments. Imagine your brain could be transplanted into another body. Is the self the brain, the body, or some combination? Or imagine a perfect digital copy of your mind is made and uploaded to a computer. Does that copy count as you? Would there now be two yous? If so, which one gets to choose what is for dinner? These questions highlight the continuity problem. Is the self tied to physical continuity, psychological continuity, or both? If you believe you are your memories, then a perfect copy with all your memories might be you. But if you believe the self requires the original biological body, then the copy is something else entirely. There is no clear answer. The puzzle of the self also touches everyday life in subtle ways. You might say, I am not myself today when you feel off. Or, I have found myself after a period of growth. Even language struggles to define what the self is. The paradox invites us to see the self not as a fixed thing, but as a process. You are not a noun. You are a verb. You are constantly becoming, adapting, growing, failing, and learning. Some philosophers compare the self to a river. The water flows and changes, but we still call it by the same name. The river never holds the same water twice, yet it remains recognizable. Is there a solution? As with most great paradoxes, no single answer satisfies everyone. Some accept that the self is an illusion, useful but ultimately empty. Others argue that the self is real, even if it defies simple explanation. A few suggest we embrace both views at once. The self is both real and constructed. It exists because we believe in it, like a beautifully maintained illusion we cannot help but participate in. Perhaps that is the quiet wisdom of the puzzle of the self. It reminds us to be gentle with ourselves and others. If we are all works in progress, no one is ever truly finished. There is always space to change, to grow, and to rewrite the story. The paradox invites curiosity rather than certainty. It encourages us to explore the mystery of being alive and aware, even if the full answer forever escapes us. So as we step calmly away from this deeply personal puzzle and prepare to meet the next intriguing paradox, I will leave you with one final thought. If you lose your keys and then find them again, they are still your keys. But if you lose yourself and find a better version, do you get to call that an upgrade? The puzzle of the criterion of truth. How can you know what you know? Sometimes philosophy tiptoes up to you and whispers a gentle riddle. Other times, it barrels through the door like a surprise quiz you forgot to study for. The puzzle of the criterion of truth is very much the second kind. You are thinking calmly about facts you know to be true when suddenly your brain interrupts and asks, "But how do you know you know?" Welcome to the puzzle of the Criterion of truth, a philosophical headache that politely refuses to go away. Let us start with the basic problem. You want to know things. You rely on knowledge to get through life. Where your house keys are, how to read a map, which button starts the coffee machine. You assume you know these things because they meet some standard of truth. But then the puzzle strikes. In order to know if something is true, you need a criterion of truth, a reliable standard by which to judge whether a belief counts as knowledge. Here is the catch. How do you know if your criterion of truth is valid? To test it, you would need to already know which beliefs are true. But to know which beliefs are true, you would first need a valid criterion. The logic loops in a perfect circle, endlessly chasing its own tail. This is called the problem of the criterion, and it has baffled philosophers since ancient times. The 2nd century philosopher Sextus Empiricus posed a version of this puzzle. Later, in modern philosophy, Roderick Chisholm famously framed the question as 1. What do we know? 2. How do we know? You cannot answer the first without answering the second. You cannot answer the second without answering the first. The paradox presents two classic responses. The first is called particularism. Particularists say, let us start by assuming we know some things for certain and work backward to figure out why. For example, you know your own name. You know that fire is hot. These basic certainties can help you test and refine your criteria for knowing other things. The second response is Methodism. Methodists insist you cannot assume anything. You must first define the method or criterion of knowing before you can declare that you know anything at all. Both approaches face serious problems. Particularism risks building its entire structure on shaky assumptions. What if the things you know turn out to be wrong? Methodism risks getting stuck at the starting line forever. If you cannot agree on the standard for knowledge, you cannot know anything at all. This leads to a third, more radical option: skepticism. Skeptics shrug and say, maybe we cannot ever know for sure. Knowledge, they argue, might be an unreachable goal. We believe things, we assume things, but we never truly know. The puzzle of the criterion of truth has real-world consequences. In law, we demand proof beyond a reasonable doubt, but the standard of what counts as reasonable can vary. In science, theories are tested and refined, but absolute certainty remains elusive. New evidence can always overturn an old idea. In journalism, fact-checking is supposed to verify what is true, yet bias and misinformation complicate even that process. The puzzle even sneaks into everyday life. You look at a clock and believe it shows the correct time. But how do you know the clock is working? You check your phone. How do you know the phone is right? You compare it to another clock. Around and around you go, until you realize all your sources depend on each other. The paradox also touches on technology and artificial intelligence. Can machines ever truly know something, or do they simply process information without understanding? What counts as knowledge for an algorithm? The answer depends on which criterion you choose to accept, and there is no universal agreement. Is there a solution? As with most classic paradoxes, no final answer satisfies everyone. Some philosophers propose coherentism. They argue that knowledge does not depend on a single foundation, but rather on how well a web of beliefs fits together. If all your beliefs support each other in a consistent way, you can tentatively claim knowledge. Others lean toward foundationalism. This view says some basic beliefs are self-evident and do not require justification. Everything else can be built on top of these bedrock truths. Neither approach fully escapes the puzzle. Coherentism risks circular reasoning. Foundationalism risks dogmatic certainty. Perhaps the lesson of the puzzle of the criterion of truth is to embrace intellectual humility. Human knowledge may always remain provisional. What we call truth today might become misunderstanding tomorrow. Yet this uncertainty does not have to paralyze us. Instead, The paradox invites us to be thoughtful explorers rather than rigid judges. We can build working models of reality, knowing they may evolve. We can hold beliefs with both conviction and openness to change. The puzzle reminds us that certainty is a comfort we may never fully earn. The search for truth is less about arriving at an endpoint and more about learning how to navigate the journey with curiosity and care. So as we set down this quietly dizzying puzzle and prepare to explore the next philosophical riddle, I will leave you with one final thought. If you confidently declare that you know nothing, does that mean you at least know one thing? The mirror paradox. Why does a mirror reverse, left and right, but not up and down? Some paradoxes sneak in quietly. The mirror paradox kicks the door open and stands in your bathroom, waiting for you to notice. You glance in the mirror. Your reflection waves back. You lean left, and the reflection leans right. Your brain pauses and asks, why does a mirror flip left and right, but not up and down? You stare harder. The reflection stares back. Nobody has answers. Welcome to the mirror paradox, one of the most familiar yet puzzling riddles of everyday life. Let us begin with the experience. You stand in front of a mirror. If you raise your right hand, your reflection raises its left hand. If you hold up a book, the text appears backward. But if you nod your head, your reflection nods too. Up stays up, down stays down. So what gives? At first glance, it feels like mirrors flip things left to right. That is what makes a printed word look backward, and why getting dressed using only a mirror sometimes feels like a test you are doomed to fail. But then the paradox creeps in. Mirrors do not actually reverse left and right. They reverse front and back. A mirror reflects light straight back along the line it arrives on. If you point your finger straight at the mirror, your reflection points a finger straight back at you. The mirror does not spin you sideways. It flips you depth-wise. So why does it look like left and right have switched? The answer lies not in the mirror, but in how your brain interprets the image. Humans are symmetrical creatures. We imagine a reflection as another person facing us. In real life, if someone turns around to face us, their left and right sides swap relative to ours. We unconsciously treat the mirrored image as if it were a person who had turned to face us, even though the mirror only flips front to back. Our mental model adds the twist that the mirror itself does not actually perform. Think of it this way. If you lie on the floor in front of a mirror, suddenly it seems like the mirror is flipping up and down instead of left and right. The direction of the flip depends entirely on your point of view. This reveals the first big lesson of the mirror paradox. Sometimes the confusion comes from us, not the object we are observing. The paradox also touches on language. When we say a mirror reverses an image, we expect it to behave like a photocopier gone rogue. But mirrors do not rotate images. They reflect them. It is us who decide which way is left or right based on our expectations. You can test this yourself. Write the word exit on a transparent sheet of plastic. Hold it up and face another person. They will see the word normally. Now face a mirror with the sheet. The word looks backward. Why? The mirror did not rotate the sheet. It reversed the image depthwise, turning the sheet inside out from our perspective. This reveals the second big lesson of the mirror paradox. Perspective shapes perception. The puzzle even sneaks into technology. Rear-view mirrors in cars often include a message. Objects in mirror are closer than they appear. This is not a philosophical warning. It is a practical one. Convex mirrors bend light to give a wider field of view, but in doing so, they make objects look smaller and farther away. In design and photography, mirrors are used to manipulate space and perception. An entire industry exists around mirror illusions that make small rooms appear larger. The mirror paradox makes interior design just as puzzling as philosophy. The paradox has also fascinated scientists. Physicists study how light behaves at reflective surfaces. They describe mirrors using the principles of specular reflection, where the angle of incidence equals the angle of reflection. This works perfectly for explaining where light rays go, but it does not explain why we interpret the result as a flip. The mirror paradox even touches on deep questions in theoretical physics. In particle physics, there is a concept called parity symmetry. It refers to whether the laws of physics remain the same if you flip spatial coordinates like left and right. For most physical laws, flipping left and right does not change anything. But in 1956, physicists discovered that certain subatomic interactions violate parity symmetry. The universe itself might not care about the difference between left and right, but in special cases, it does. So the mirror paradox teases at both the everyday and the cosmic level. Is there a solution? As with many classic paradoxes, the solution depends on redefining the problem. The mirror does not reverse left and right. It reverses front and back. The apparent left-right flip comes from our tendency to interpret the reflected image as a rotated version of ourselves. Some philosophers argue that the mirror paradox is not really a paradox at all. It is a misunderstanding of spatial transformations combined with linguistic habits. But that is exactly why it remains fascinating. The mirror paradox reminds us that even the most ordinary objects can challenge our deepest assumptions. It turns a routine glance into a mirror into a moment of philosophical wonder. The deeper lesson may be one of humility. If something as common as a bathroom mirror can leave us scratching our heads, what does that say about how we understand the rest of reality? The paradox invites us to question what we see, to be aware of how much our mind adds to our perception of the world. It encourages us to remain curious about the strange partnership between reality and interpretation. So, as we step away from this reflective, pun intended, puzzle, and prepare to explore the next delightful mystery of the universe, I will leave you with one final thought. If mirrors reverse front and back, not left and right, does that mean the next time you check your hair, you should really be worried about how it looks from behind? The paradox of explanation. When does explaining something explain too much or too little? Sometimes philosophy shows up gently, like a friend offering you a cup of tea. Other times it grabs you by the collar and says, "Explain yourself." The paradox of explanation does exactly that. You casually say, "This happens because of that," and suddenly your brain leans in and asks, "But why does that happen?" You stare into space, and the endless chain of whys begins. Welcome to the paradox of explanation, where every attempt to clarify something seems to raise more questions than it answers. Let us begin with what seems simple. You want to understand the world. Why is the sky blue? Why do apples fall from trees? Why does your dog always bark at the mailman? You look for causes, reasons, patterns. You want explanations. An explanation feels satisfying when it tells you why something is the way it is. Scientists, teachers, parents, and even friends use explanations to help make sense of things. But then the paradox creeps in. At what point does an explanation actually explain? Some explanations feel too thin. They answer why with an unsatisfying shrug. Others feel too bloated, adding so many details that the original mystery gets buried under a mountain of unnecessary information. Philosophers have wrestled with this problem for centuries. The ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle described 4 types of causes that could explain things. Material cause, what it is made of. Formal cause, its shape or structure. Efficient cause, what brought it into existence. And final cause, its purpose. This framework helped organize thinking for centuries, but the deeper problem of when an explanation becomes a good explanation never went away. The paradox of explanation arises when we realize that any explanation must itself be explained. For example, we say, the glass broke because it fell off the table. But then we can ask, why did it fall? The answer might be, because of gravity. Then we can ask, why does gravity exist? And so on. The chain of explanation seems infinite. This leads to what philosophers call the regress problem. If every explanation needs another explanation, does that mean we can never fully understand anything? Are we trapped in an endless loop of why forever? One way to break the chain is by reaching what some call brute facts. These are facts that simply are, with no deeper explanation. For example, many scientists treat the existence of fundamental laws of physics as brute facts, but this solution feels a bit unsatisfying. It is like a child asking why repeatedly until a parent finally says, "Because I said so." It stops the questioning, but leaves a lingering sense of mystery. Another problem with explanations is called the problem of relevance. Good explanations focus on what matters. If you ask why a plane crashed, you want to know about mechanical failure, weather, or pilot error, not the color of the seats or the type of peanuts served on board. Yet deciding which details are relevant and which are not can be surprisingly difficult. In everyday life, we constantly filter information to make explanations useful. But in complex systems, where everything seems connected, it becomes harder to know which causes to highlight. The paradox of explanation also shows up in science. Scientists seek to explain natural phenomena using theories and models. But no theory explains everything. Theories are approximations of reality, and they come with limitations and assumptions. For example, Newton's laws explain how objects move under ordinary conditions, but they break down at very high speeds or on very small scales. Einstein's theory of relativity explains high-speed and gravitational effects, but does not fully integrate with quantum mechanics, which governs subatomic particles. Each new explanation solves some problems but creates new mysteries. Philosophers call this the theory dependence of observation. What you see and understand depends on the framework you use to interpret it. An explanation may seem perfect within one framework but completely useless in another. The paradox of explanation also touches on language. Explanations rely on words, and words are often vague or ambiguous. A single word can mean different things in different contexts. For example, if you say, "The car stopped because it ran out of gas," you are using "because" to indicate causation. But if you say, "Because of the rain, the game was cancelled," "because" signals a condition rather than a direct cause. Language shapes how we explain and understand the world, but it also limits what we can say and know. The paradox sneaks into everyday experiences.
You tell a friend you are late because the train was delayed. Technically true, but it leaves out details like your decision to take the late train in the first place, or the fact that you pressed snooze 3 times that morning. How much detail turns an explanation from helpful into annoying? Where do you draw the line? Is there a solution? As with many great paradoxes, no single answer satisfies everyone.
Some philosophers propose explanatory minimalism. This view suggests we should prefer the simplest explanation that accounts for all the facts. It is sometimes called Occam's razor, named after the medieval thinker William of Ockham. Occam's razor states that we should not multiply causes beyond necessity. In other words, if 2 explanations work equally well, choose the simpler one. Others argue for explanatory pluralism. This view says that no single explanation can capture the full truth. We may need multiple overlapping explanations depending on context. A physicist, a biologist, a psychologist, and an artist might all explain a bird differently, as a flying object, a living organism, a behavior system, or a symbol of freedom. All are valid within their domains. The deeper lesson of the paradox of explanation may be this: explanations are tools, not ultimate answers. They help us organize our understanding and navigate the world, but they are not reality itself. The map is not the territory. Explanations work best when they illuminate rather than confuse, when they guide us rather than trap us in endless loops. The paradox encourages intellectual humility. It reminds us that asking good questions is just as important as giving good answers. It teaches us to recognize when we have explained enough and when we are simply chasing our own tails. So as we gently close the book on this curious puzzle and prepare to journey onward into the next mind-twisting riddle of existence, I will leave you with one final thought. If every explanation needs an explanation, does explaining that fact explain anything at all, or just make you late for lunch? The Skolem Paradox. Can infinity be smaller than itself? Some paradoxes tiptoe into your thoughts when you least expect them. The Skolem Paradox does not bother with such politeness. It barges in while you are minding your own business and demands, how can something be infinite and yet somehow smaller at the same time? You stare blankly. Your coffee goes cold. Your brain quietly whispers, this is going to be a long day. Welcome to the Skolem Paradox, one of the most delightfully strange puzzles in the world of mathematics and logic. Let us start with the idea of infinity. Infinity seems like a simple concept. Endlessness, boundlessness, bigger than anything you can count. The ancient Greeks, medieval scholars, and modern mathematicians have all wrestled with this slippery notion. In the early 20th century, the mathematician Georg Cantor revolutionized how we think about infinity. Cantor showed that there are different sizes of infinity. For example, the set of natural numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, is infinite, but so is the set of real numbers, which includes all fractions and decimals. Surprisingly, there are more real numbers than natural numbers. One infinity is strictly larger than another. This idea was mind-blowing enough. But then the Skolem Paradox arrived to make things even stranger. The paradox is named after Norwegian mathematician Thoralf Skolem, who worked on formal logic and set theory. Skolem noticed something deeply puzzling about the foundations of mathematics. Mathematicians can define a formal system, like Zermelo-Fraenkel's set theory, known as ZF, which includes the concept of infinite sets. In this system, certain sets are described as uncountable, meaning you cannot list all their elements one by one. The set of real numbers is a perfect example. So far, so good. But then Skolem applied something called the Löwenheim-Skolem theorem to this system. The theorem states that if a formal system has any infinite model, it must also have a smaller model that is countable from the outside. This creates the paradox. From within the model, the set of real numbers still appears uncountable. From outside, the entire model, including the uncountable set, is countable. It is like having a library that claims to hold an infinite number of books, yet when you stand outside, you can somehow number and list every single book. The books still swear they are uncountable. The Skolem Paradox forces us to ask, how can something be uncountable and countable at the same time? The answer lies in the strange relationship between language and reality. In mathematical logic, a model is a structure that satisfies the rules and statements of a theory. Models do not have to be real in the everyday sense. They are abstract collections of objects that behave the way the theory says they should. The Skolem Paradox shows that there can be different models of set theory. One where a set looks uncountable, and another where the same set looks countable, depending on your point of view. This leads to what philosophers and mathematicians call modal relativity. The size of infinity is not an absolute fact across all models. It depends on which mathematical universe you are looking from. Some thinkers compare this to standing inside a house of mirrors. From certain angles, your reflection looks infinite, stretching on forever. From other angles, it looks like just one of many reflections. The object has not changed, your viewpoint has. The paradox creates a deep discomfort. We tend to believe that mathematical truths are fixed and objective. 2 + 2 = 4, no matter where you live or which mirror you stand in front of. But the Skolem Paradox suggests that even something as seemingly solid as the size of infinity might depend on the structure of the system you are using to describe it. The puzzle touches on some of the biggest questions in philosophy and mathematics. Is mathematics discovered, like a hidden landscape waiting to be explored? Or is it invented, a set of rules and symbols we create to describe patterns? If mathematics is discovered, how can different models give different answers about the same object? If mathematics is invented, what does that say about its claim to absolute truth? The Skolem Paradox does not provide easy answers. Some mathematicians embrace a formalistic view. Mathematics is just a game played with symbols and rules. There is no true infinity, only models where we define what infinity means. Others argue for Platonism, the belief that mathematical objects exist independently of our definitions, and that the paradox simply reveals how limited our models are. The paradox even sneaks into computer science. When designing databases or algorithms that deal with large datasets, programmers often face situations where something appears infinite from within the system, but remains finite and countable when viewed from the outside. The Skolem Paradox teaches a humbling lesson. It shows that the tools we use to describe reality, symbols, language, logic, can sometimes turn against us. They can create situations where the same thing looks radically different depending on the lens you use. Is there a solution? As with many classic paradoxes, no universally agreed upon answer exists. The Skolem Paradox is generally accepted as a quirk of formal logic, not a flaw. Mathematicians acknowledge the weirdness and move on. They continue to use set theory and model theory successfully in countless applications, even while the puzzle quietly lingers in the background. Perhaps the paradox's greatest gift is perspective. It reminds us that certainty, even in the realm of pure math, may be more elusive than we like to believe. It invites us to be cautious about claims of absolute truth and to appreciate the subtlety and elegance of mathematical structures. The Skolem Paradox encourages intellectual flexibility. It teaches that sometimes two seemingly contradictory ideas can both be valid within their own frameworks. It is a gentle reminder that in mathematics, as in life, the way you frame the question shapes the answer you get. So as we gently place this deeply puzzling yet strangely beautiful riddle back onto the shelf of unsolved mysteries and prepare to move on to the next curious paradox, I will leave you with one final thought. If infinity can be smaller than itself, does that mean your never-ending to-do list might actually be finished someday? The whole argument. Does space exist by itself or only because of what is in it? Some paradoxes whisper their way into your mind. The whole argument does not have that kind of patience. It bursts in, rearranges the furniture, and calmly asks, does space exist on its own, or only because things exist inside it? You stop. You stare at the ceiling. Your brain quietly responds, well, now I cannot stop thinking about it. Welcome to the whole argument, a philosophical and scientific puzzle that emerged from the work of none other than Albert Einstein and still stirs debate today. Let us begin with a simple idea. When you walk into an empty room, you assume the space still exists, even though nothing is inside it. You think of space as a kind of invisible container, ready to be filled with objects, people, furniture, or, if you are unlucky, unexpected Lego bricks underfoot. This view of space as an independent entity is called substantivalism. Substantivalists believe space exists in its own right. Things exist in space, but space itself is a thing. But not everyone agrees. An alternative view, called relationalism, claims space is nothing more than the relationships between objects. No objects, no space. The distance between you and a chair makes sense only because both you and the chair exist. Space is not a thing, it is a set of relations. Enter Einstein. In developing general relativity, Einstein proposed that gravity is not a force acting at a distance, but rather the curvature of space-time itself, caused by mass and energy. This idea revolutionized physics. Massive objects like planets and stars warp the fabric of space-time, creating the effect we experience as gravity. But this bold new theory also opened the door for the whole argument. Here is how it works. Imagine a region of space with no matter inside it, a hole. Outside the hole, the positions of planets and stars are known and fixed. Inside the hole, according to the mathematics of general relativity, there could be multiple possible ways space-time might curve, all of which are mathematically valid solutions. In other words, the gravitational shape of the hole can vary without changing anything outside the hole. This leads to the paradox. If space has multiple possible realities inside the same hole, which one is real? Does space-time have an existence of its own, independent of the objects that shape it? Einstein initially viewed this as a serious problem. If general relativity allowed multiple equally valid versions of reality, how could the theory claim to describe the reality at all? The whole argument seemed to threaten the very foundation of general relativity. If space-time can be moved around inside the hole without affecting anything observable, does that mean the hole has no physical reality? Is it just mathematical fluff? Einstein eventually resolved the problem by adopting a subtle but profound view called diffeomorphism invariance. This is a fancy way of saying that shifting space-time coordinates around while keeping the relationships between things the same does not create a new physical situation. In simple terms, moving the hole around or reshaping it slightly does not change anything we can measure or observe. Reality is determined by the relationships between things, not by any invisible space substance lurking underneath. This elegantly brought Einstein closer to the relationalist view. Space-time is real, but only as the web of relationships between objects and energy. Yet the paradox did not vanish completely. The whole argument still raises big questions about the nature of space, time, and reality itself. Is space-time something out there, like a giant invisible jelly mold into which the universe is poured? Or is it nothing more than the shifting dance of energy and mass? The whole argument touches the core of metaphysics, the branch of philosophy that asks, what exists?
It also connects to modern efforts to reconcile general relativity with quantum mechanics. In quantum gravity research, some theories suggest that space-time itself might be an emergent property, not a fundamental thing. Space and time could arise from more basic elements, much like temperature emerges from the motion of molecules.
If true, it would mean the whole argument was pointing us toward a deeper truth all along, that space may not exist independently at all. The paradox also sneaks into our everyday thinking. When you look at an empty field, do you see the fieldness of the field? Or are you simply noting the absence of trees, buildings, and cows? The whole argument quietly asks, can emptiness exist as a thing, or does it only exist because of what is missing? Is there a solution? As with so many great paradoxes, no universally agreed upon answer exists. Most physicists accept Einstein's resolution. Space-time has no physical identity independent of the matter and energy that fill it. Shifting the mathematical coordinates does not shift reality. But some philosophers continue to explore whether a deeper version of substantivalism might still hold, especially in the search for a theory of everything that unites gravity with quantum physics. The whole argument offers a powerful lesson about intellectual humility. It reminds us that the very concepts we take for granted, space, distance, emptiness, might be far more slippery and complicated than they appear. It encourages us to question what we mean when we say something exists. It warns us not to confuse the map, our descriptions of reality, with the territory, reality itself. The whole argument also demonstrates how science and philosophy often walk hand in hand. Physics asks, what does the math say? Philosophy responds, but what does that mean? Together, they dance around the edges of understanding, occasionally tripping over paradoxes like the whole argument that demand attention but refuse to be neatly solved. So as we step gracefully away from this surprisingly deep and mind-twisting riddle of cosmic emptiness and prepare to wander into the next paradox of existence, I will leave you with one final thought. If space only exists because of things inside it, does that mean your empty fridge is actually full of philosophical meaning? The Sleeping Beauty Twin Paradox. Can waking up make you doubt reality? Some paradoxes sneak up on you like a stray thought at midnight. Others pull the blanket off while you are sleeping and shout, "Wake up, I have a puzzle for you." The Sleeping Beauty Twin Paradox definitely belongs to the second group. You sit up, groggy, and your brain whispers, "How can waking up cause such confusion?" Welcome to the Sleeping Beauty Twin Paradox, a thought experiment that manages to turn something as ordinary as waking up into one of the most debated puzzles in philosophy. Let us begin with the setup. Imagine you are Sleeping Beauty, the main character in this paradox. On Sunday, you volunteer for an experiment. The researchers explain that they will put you to sleep and flip a fair coin. If the coin lands heads, you will be awakened only once on Monday. If it lands tails, you will be awakened twice, once on Monday and once on Tuesday. But your memory of the first awakening will be erased before the second one. Each time you wake up, you have no idea what day it is or whether you have been awakened before. Here is the question. When you wake up and have no idea whether it is Monday or Tuesday, what should you believe the probability is that the coin landed heads? You might think, well, the coin is fair, so it must be 50-50. That seems reasonable. But then the paradox kicks in. If the coin lands heads, you will be woken up only once. If it lands tails, you will be woken up twice. Statistically, you are more likely to be waking up in a tails world because there are 2 opportunities for waking up under tails, but only 1 under heads. So should you assign a probability of 1/3 to heads and 2/3 to tails? This simple scenario has generated endless debate among philosophers, mathematicians, and anyone who has ever woken up confused and wondered what day it was. But wait, it gets even stranger. Enter the Sleeping Beauty twin paradox. Now imagine there are 2 participants, you and your identical twin. Both of you enter the experiment. The rules are the same: a fair coin flip, memory erasure, multiple awakenings under tails, and no way of knowing which day it is. You wake up and are told, either you are the only one awake, or your twin is awake too. You know that if heads came up, only one of you was awakened on Monday. If tails came up, both of you are awakened on Monday, and then both of you again on Tuesday. Once again, you are asked, what is the probability that the coin landed heads? The paradox deepens. Now you must not only account for your own uncertainty about time, but also uncertainty about who else might be awake. Just like in the original Sleeping Beauty scenario, there are more waking events under tails than heads. But now the addition of a second person forces you to consider possible worlds where you and your twin occupy different awakening slots. Should you say heads is 1/3 likely and tails is 2/3 likely, as before? Or does the presence of a twin somehow change the calculation? Philosophers divide into 2 camps. The halfers believe the probability of heads remains 50-50, based on the original fairness of the coin. They argue that adding extra awakenings does not change the fundamental odds of the coin flip. The thirders argue that since there are twice as many awakening events under tails, you are statistically more likely to be in a tails world. The twin scenario simply amplifies this reasoning. The paradox touches on deep questions about probability, evidence, and how we reason under uncertainty. What does it mean to count possible outcomes when they depend on memory erasure, duplication, and incomplete information? The puzzle also explores the strange nature of self-locating belief. In most probability problems, you know where and when you are. But in the Sleeping Beauty paradox, you do not even know which waking you are experiencing. You are left asking, what are the odds that this particular awakening is happening under heads or tails? The paradox connects to real-world situations more than you might expect. In quantum mechanics, the famous many worlds interpretation suggests that all possible outcomes of an event actually occur in different branches of reality. You only experience one branch, but there may be countless other versions of you waking up in alternate worlds. The Sleeping Beauty twin paradox becomes a playful analogy for thinking about probability across branching realities. It also touches on puzzles in epistemology, the study of knowledge. How do we reason about what we know when we know we do not know everything? Can we make rational judgments under radical uncertainty? Is there a solution? As with most paradoxes, there is no universal agreement. The thirders remain convinced their reasoning holds. More waking events under tails equals a higher chance of waking up in a tails world. The halfers stick to the original fairness of the coin and reject the idea that multiplying awakenings changes the basic odds. Some philosophers propose middle ground solutions that try to reconcile both intuitions. Others argue that the paradox exposes flaws in how we define probability in the first place. Perhaps the deeper lesson of the Sleeping Beauty twin paradox is not about picking sides, but about recognizing the limits of our understanding. The paradox shows how even the simplest seeming questions, like whether a coin landed heads or tails, can become profoundly complicated when uncertainty, memory loss, and duplication are involved. It reminds us that reasoning under uncertainty is one of the hardest and most fascinating challenges in both philosophy and life. The paradox encourages intellectual humility. It teaches that even when we think we have all the information, we may still be missing crucial context. It invites us to explore strange and unlikely scenarios as a way of sharpening our thinking skills.
So, as we gently step away from this delightfully bewildering puzzle and prepare to explore the next mind-twisting curiosity, I will leave you with one final thought. If you wake up not knowing what day it is, and then realize you do not know which version of you woke up, does that mean hitting snooze counts as philosophical multitasking? The Fermi Paradox. If the universe is so big, where is everybody? Some paradoxes whisper softly as you gaze at the stars. The Fermi Paradox is not one of them. It leans over your shoulder as you admire a sparkling night sky and blurts out, "So, where is everybody?" You blink, you stare. The silence of space suddenly feels louder than ever. Welcome to the Fermi Paradox, one of the most famous cosmic mysteries of modern science. Let us begin with the basic facts. The universe is big, really big. There are an estimated 2 trillion galaxies. Each galaxy holds hundreds of billions of stars. Around many of those stars are planets, and some of those planets likely have conditions suitable for life. In 1961, astronomer Frank Drake proposed the Drake equation to estimate the number of civilizations in our galaxy that might be able to communicate with us. The numbers suggest the odds should be overwhelmingly in favor of alien life existing somewhere. So where are they? That simple question is the heart of the Fermi Paradox, named after physicist Enrico Fermi, who supposedly asked it during a casual lunch conversation in 1950. Given the size and age of the universe, alien civilizations should have had plenty of time to explore, expand, and leave behind evidence of their existence. Yet when we look out into space, we find nothing. No signals, no visits, no footprints, no space brochures. The paradox raises a profound question. Is the silence evidence of absence? Many possible explanations have been proposed, and each comes with its own fascinating twist. Some suggest we may be early. Perhaps intelligent life is still rare, and we are one of the first civilizations to emerge. The universe may be mostly quiet because it has not had enough time to fill up with advanced species. Others argue we may be late. Civilizations may have risen and fallen long before we appeared. They could have burned out, gone extinct, or vanished in ways we cannot detect. We are like archaeologists arriving at an empty village with no idea what happened. There is also the possibility of the Great Filter. The Great Filter hypothesis suggests that there is some barrier or challenge that most civilizations fail to pass. It could happen early, like the leap from simple to complex life. Or it could happen later, when civilizations develop technology capable of self-destruction. If the Great Filter lies behind us, we are extremely lucky. If it lies ahead, we may be in trouble. Another idea is the zoo hypothesis. Perhaps advanced alien civilizations know we exist, but deliberately avoid contact, much like we avoid interfering with wildlife. We could be living in a galactic nature preserve, watched from afar by beings who are waiting for us to mature, or at least stop launching car-sized robots into space with questionable playlists. Some suggest we are simply not listening correctly. Alien life might use communication methods far beyond our understanding. Neutrino beams, gravitational waves, or technologies we cannot even imagine. We might be listening to the wrong channels, like trying to tune into Wi-Fi with a stone tablet. Others propose that alien life is common, but quiet. Civilizations may choose to remain hidden out of fear. They know predators might exist, and broadcasting their location across the galaxy could be dangerously naive. It is the cosmic version of staying silent when you hear footsteps in a dark forest. There is also the possibility that we are truly alone. Life may be astonishingly rare. The delicate conditions that allowed life to form and evolve on Earth might be an almost impossible combination of chance and chemistry. We could be the only example of intelligent life in the universe. The Fermi Paradox touches on deep philosophical and existential questions. Are we special or ordinary? Is life a fluke or a cosmic rule? If we are alone,
Does that give us greater responsibility to preserve and protect life on Earth? The paradox even sneaks into pop culture. Books, movies, and games often explore scenarios inspired by the Fermi Paradox. First contact, alien invasions, lost civilizations, and eerie silence. The absence of aliens has become almost as captivating as their imagined presence. The puzzle also reminds us of the limits of human perception. The observable universe is vast, and our ability to detect faint signals across interstellar distances is still in its infancy. We have only been listening seriously for a few decades. The Milky Way alone is 100,000 light-years across. It may simply be too soon to draw conclusions. Is there a solution? As with most great paradoxes, no definitive answer exists. The search for extraterrestrial life continues through projects like SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, as well as through robotic missions exploring planets and moons in our solar system. The upcoming James Webb Space Telescope and future observatories may give us new tools to detect signs of life on distant worlds. The Fermi Paradox teaches us humility. It reminds us that even with all our knowledge and technology, we may still be missing the big picture. The universe does not owe us an explanation, but it invites us to keep asking questions. The paradox encourages curiosity. It challenges us to explore, to look beyond our little corner of the cosmos, and to imagine what possibilities may lie hidden among the stars. Perhaps the silence itself is a message, a reminder that we have barely begun to understand the mysteries of space, time, and life. So as we drift away from this vast and tantalizing puzzle and prepare to encounter the next delightful enigma, I will leave you with one final thought. If we ever do meet aliens, do you think they will ask us the same question we have been asking all along? So, where is everybody? The identity of Indiscernibles paradox. If two things are exactly alike, are they really two things? Some paradoxes creep in through the back door. The identity of Indiscernibles. Paradox kicks open the front door, pulls up a chair and says, if two things are completely identical, are they actually different things at all? You stop. You stare at your matching socks and wonder if they are about to start a philosophical argument. Welcome to the identity of Indiscernibles paradox, a puzzle that sounds simple but manages to make even the most confident philosophers question their grip on reality. Let us start with the basic idea. The concept comes from the German philosopher Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz in the 17th century. Leibniz proposed the principle of the identity of indiscernibles, which says, if two objects share all the same properties, they must be the same object. In other words, you cannot have two distinct things that are identical in every possible way. If nothing sets them apart, they are not really two things. They are just one thing seen twice. This feels logical at first. You can tell two apples apart because one has a small bruise and the other does not. You can tell identical twins apart by tiny differences in voice, freckles, or personality. Even two brand new mass-produced coins might have microscopic flaws under close examination. But then the paradox sneaks in. Imagine a universe with two perfect spheres. They have the exact same size, mass, color, temperature, texture, everything. They are floating in empty space with nothing else around. No stars, no landmarks, no observers. Are they really two spheres? Or is there only one sphere with the illusion of two-ness? If there is no possible way to distinguish between them, even in theory, can you still claim there are two distinct objects? This is the core of the identity of Indiscernibles paradox. Philosophers and physicists have argued about this for centuries. Some agree with Leibniz. If two objects are completely indistinguishable, they collapse into being the same object. There is no way to tell them apart, so there is nothing to distinguish. Others point out that the very fact you can say sphere 1 and sphere 2 means you are talking about two things. The spheres occupy different positions in space, even if space itself has no features. This introduces the idea of haesiety, a wonderfully strange word. Haesiety refers to the thisness of an object, the quality of being this particular thing, separate from any shared properties. Even if two objects are identical in every other way, they are still two because they occupy two positions. The debate continues. Modern physics complicates the paradox even further. In quantum mechanics, particles like electrons are truly identical. There is no measurable property that can distinguish one electron from another. If you swap two electrons, there is no way to know anything changed. Does this mean the electrons are really one, or are they two things that simply refuse to give up their secrets? Physicists have invented the term indistinguishable particles to describe this bizarre behavior. It works mathematically, but does not fully resolve the philosophical mystery. The identity of indiscernibles. Paradox touches on deeper questions about individuality and identity. What makes something this thing and not that thing? Is it shape, substance, location, relationship to other objects? The paradox also sneaks into our everyday experience. You buy two identical coffee mugs from a store. The only way you can tell them apart at home is by remembering which one you put on which shelf. The mugs themselves have no obvious differences. Are they still two separate mugs, or are they one mug concept duplicated in space? The puzzle challenges how we think about categories. If two things are physically, chemically, and functionally identical, do we still call them two for convenience? Or are we just fooling ourselves with labels? The identity of indiscernibles even shows up in computer science. In databases, objects with identical attributes might be treated as separate records only because they occupy different rows. Programmers often assign unique identifiers to otherwise identical items just to avoid this paradox in practical terms. Is there a solution? As with most classic paradoxes, no universally accepted answer exists. Some philosophers remain strict followers of Leibniz's principle and insist that truly indiscernible objects cannot exist as separate things. Others argue that spatial or relational properties provide enough distinction. Even if two spheres are identical, the fact they are here and there makes them separate. A few suggest the paradox reveals flaws in how we think about objects at all. Perhaps things are not as clear-cut as we imagine. Maybe the universe does not deal in neat categories, and our human desire for labels creates artificial distinctions. The identity of indiscernibles. Paradox teaches a valuable lesson. It reminds us that reality is often more slippery than we expect. It shows how even the simplest assumptions, like what counts as two, can dissolve under careful scrutiny. The paradox encourages intellectual humility. It asks us to rethink how we define individuality, not just for objects, but also for people, ideas, and experiences. It gently suggests that our labels and categories might be convenient fictions, useful for navigating life but not ultimate truths. The identity of indiscernibles also invites playfulness. It allows us to imagine strange worlds, universes of perfect duplicates, particles that refuse to reveal their individuality, and objects that exist only because we declare they do. So, as we gently step away from this delightfully maddening puzzle and prepare to explore the next fascinating paradox of existence, I will leave you with one final thought. If two identical socks disappear in the laundry and only one returns, did you lose a sock, or did the socks just decide to reunite as one? The Heterological Paradox. Can a word describe itself without contradicting itself? Some paradoxes drift gently into your thoughts like leaves on a quiet stream. The Heterological Paradox crashes through the window, grabs a dictionary and demands, "Can a word describe itself without creating chaos?" You stare blankly at the page. Your brain calmly mutters, "Here we go again." Welcome to the Heterological Paradox, a playful yet deeply unsettling puzzle from the world of language and logic. Let us begin with the strange nature of words. Words describe things. The word blue describes a color. The word long describes length. But some words also describe themselves. For example, short is a short word. Polysyllabic is fittingly a word with multiple syllables. This leads us to a curious distinction. In the 1920s, the German logician Kurt Grelling coined two terms. Ontological words are words that describe themselves. Word is a word. English is an English word. Heterological words are words that do not describe themselves. Long is not a long word. Blue is not a blue word. So far, this feels like a charming little linguistic game. But then the paradox sneaks in. What about the word heterological itself? Is heterological heterological? If heterological does not describe itself, then by definition, it does describe itself, because that is what heterological words do. But if heterological does describe itself, then it must be ontological, which means it cannot be heterological. The moment you try to categorize it, the logic flips back on itself like a philosophical seesaw. This is the heterological paradox, also known as Grelling's paradox. It works in a similar way to Russell's paradox, which appeared a few years earlier and shook the foundations of mathematics. Bertrand Russell asked, "Does the set of all sets that do not contain themselves contain itself?" Both paradoxes expose a deep flaw in self-reference. The moment something refers to itself in a certain way, contradictions start to appear. The heterological paradox teaches a simple but powerful lesson. Language is slippery. Our everyday way of sorting things into neat categories breaks down when self-reference gets involved. Philosophers and logicians have wrestled with this puzzle for decades. Some argue that the paradox arises because of vague definitions. We assume every word must belong to exactly one category, ontological or heterological, but the system was never designed to handle self-reference so directly. Others suggest the paradox exposes deeper problems with the foundations of logic itself. In mathematics and formal systems, self-reference must be handled with extreme care. Otherwise, you risk creating contradictions that can collapse an entire theory. The heterological paradox shows up in real life more often than you might think. Consider labels. Imagine a sticker that says, "This label is false." If it is false, then it must be true. If it is true, then it must be false. The logic loops endlessly. Or think of the phrase, "I always lie." If the speaker is telling the truth, then they must be lying. But if they are lying, then they are telling the truth. These are known as liar paradoxes, and they operate on the same sneaky principle as the heterological paradox. Self-reference creates a logical feedback loop that defies resolution. The puzzle also touches on computer science. Programs sometimes encounter infinite loops where an instruction refers back to itself in a way that cannot resolve. Programmers must write code carefully to avoid creating situations where the program crashes or gets stuck repeating forever. The heterological paradox even sneaks into philosophy of mind. Can a mind fully understand itself? Can consciousness completely explain consciousness? Or does trying to fully map your own awareness lead to an endless spiral of explanations? Is there a solution? As with most classic paradoxes, no universally accepted answer exists. Some logicians argue that we should simply ban self-referential definitions from certain systems. This is called type theory, and it was developed partly in response to paradoxes like this one. Type theory creates layers of language so that objects can refer to lower layers, but not to themselves. It works well for avoiding contradiction in formal logic and mathematics, but feels like an artificial fix when applied to natural language. Others suggest that natural languages are inherently messy and that paradoxes like this are simply part of the price we pay for having a flexible, creative system of communication. The deeper lesson of the heterological paradox may be about humility. It reminds us that language is not perfect. Words are tools for understanding the world, but they are not the world itself. When pushed too far, language can break under the weight of its own rules. The paradox encourages curiosity. It invites us to play with definitions, to explore boundaries, and to appreciate the weirdness lurking behind ordinary concepts. It shows us that even something as simple as a single word can open a door to endless philosophical adventure. So as we step away from this dizzying linguistic puzzle and prepare to explore the next delightful mystery, I will leave you with one final thought. If unreadable is printed in tiny, blurry letters, does that make it the most honest word of them all? The paradox of infinite regress. Can there ever be a first cause? Some paradoxes quietly creep into your thoughts at night. The paradox of infinite regress does not bother with subtlety. It pulls up a chair beside your bed, taps you on the shoulder, and calmly says, "What caused that?" You answer. It smiles and asks, "And what caused that?" You sigh. You know you are not sleeping anytime soon. Welcome to the paradox of infinite regress, one of philosophy's oldest and most persistent mind-benders. Let us begin with a simple question. Why does anything exist? It seems like a fair place to start. Everything around you seems to have a cause. The tree grew because of a seed. The seed came from another tree. That tree came from yet another seed. On and on it goes. The same applies to objects. The book on your table was printed at a factory, which was built by workers, who were born of parents, who were born of other parents. Every explanation seems to lead to another explanation. The paradox of infinite regress appears when you try to trace this chain all the way back to the very beginning. Does the chain go on forever, or does it stop somewhere? If it goes on forever, you have an infinite regress, a never-ending sequence of causes with no first cause. But if it stops somewhere, you are faced with a new puzzle. What started the whole process? This is the essence of the paradox. Either option feels uncomfortable. An infinite chain of causes feels incomplete. If there is no first cause, how did the sequence even get started? A first cause feels equally strange. If everything needs a cause, why does the first cause get a free pass? What makes it special? Philosophers, scientists, and theologians have debated this for centuries. In ancient Greece, Aristotle proposed a solution: the unmoved mover. He argued that something must have started the chain without itself being moved or caused. The unmoved mover, in his view, was the ultimate cause of everything else. In religious philosophy, this idea evolved into the concept of God as the first cause. Many theists believe that God exists outside of time and space and therefore does not require a cause. But not everyone agrees. Skeptics argue that positing a first cause simply shifts the problem. Instead of asking what caused the universe, you now ask what caused the first cause. The regress has not been solved. It has just been renamed. The paradox of infinite regress also shows up in modern science. The Big Bang theory suggests the universe began as an infinitely dense point that expanded outward. But what caused the Big Bang? Some say quantum fluctuations. Others suggest it was the product of a previous universe. Cosmologists explore theories of multiverses, where our universe is just one of many. Each universe might give rise to another in an eternal cosmic cycle. But even then, the question returns: what caused the first universe in the chain? The paradox even sneaks into everyday thinking. You ask a child, "Why are you coloring the wall?" "Because I want to." "Why do you want to?" "Because I like colors." "Why do you like colors?" You get the idea. Eventually, even the child runs out of answers. The same endless questioning happens in logic, ethics, and mathematics. Consider moral philosophy. Why is something considered good? Because it promotes happiness. Why is happiness good? Because it fulfills human needs. Why are human needs important? And so on. In mathematics, proofs rely on axioms, statements accepted without proof. But then the question becomes, why those axioms? Why not others? Is there a solution? As with most great paradoxes, no single answer satisfies everyone. Some philosophers accept foundationalism. They argue that some things must simply be accepted as brute facts. They exist without needing an explanation. Others prefer coherentism, which avoids the need for a starting point by suggesting that beliefs form a web of mutual support. Instead of a chain, knowledge becomes a circle where everything holds everything else in place. Still others propose infinitism, which boldly accepts infinite regress as not problematic. They argue that explanations can go on forever without requiring a final stopping point. The paradox of infinite regress teaches a valuable lesson. It reminds us that not every question has a clear answer. Sometimes seeking an ultimate cause may be impossible within the limits of human understanding. The paradox encourages intellectual humility. It shows that even the simplest seeming questions can spiral into endless complexity. It asks us to be comfortable with the unknown and to accept that some mysteries may never be fully unraveled. The paradox also sparks curiosity. It invites thinkers to explore new ideas, to push boundaries, and to imagine creative alternatives to the way we traditionally think about cause and effect. Some even suggest that the paradox is not a flaw in reasoning, but a clue that our concepts of time, causation, and existence may need to be rethought.
So, as we gently place this ancient yet endlessly fascinating puzzle back on the shelf of eternal mysteries and prepare to journey into the next paradox of existence, I will leave you with one final thought. If every cause needs a cause, does that mean your endless list of unfinished chores will keep creating more chores forever?